Good morning. This is January 15th. It's 9 a.m. 2019, and this is the Board of County Commissioner agenda setting work session. And we'll start by way of introduction. I'm John Hutchings, chair of the board this year.
Ty Menser, Commissioner for District 3.
Let's go this way.
Welcome you to Beaumont, clerk of the board.
Ramiro Chavez, County Manager.
Vicki Larkin, Commissioner Edwards' office.
And hang on here. Hang on. This is just a moment.
Thank you. Robin Campbell.
Assistant County Manager and Finance Director. That's all right. So here we go. We're going to start with a review of the BoCC draft agenda for January 15th, which is today. Oh, but it's been canceled, so there is no BoCC meeting today, nor is there next week.
That is correct, Commissioners. It has been canceled. So the next meeting, the formal Board of County Commissioners meeting is scheduled for January 29th, 2 in the afternoon.
All right, thank you. And the next thing on the agenda is review of the Transportation Benefit District draft agenda for this afternoon, and it too has been canceled.
That also has been canceled, and staff is going to come back with you and start working on the agenda with the president of the Thurston of the Transportation Benefit District. That will be Commissioner Menser in the next couple of months, just to make sure, give some time to draft that agenda.
To your chagrin. Proclamations and awards. Anything that you're aware of? Is there something in the packet?
No.
Oh, the topic. This is to determine what we want to do for the calendar year?
Yes, it is. Attached in your packet of proclamation from January to December, you have potential items that you can choose to have a proclamation on. The next one coming up in your packet would be February, the African American History Month. And as you can see, we did this last year.
Okay, the entire list I'm looking at, La Bonita, it's based on what we did this last year?
Correct.
Or was done over the last number of years?
Last year. I put last year.
Okay. So are you looking for a yes or a no from the board?
You can give me a yes or a no whenever you've gone through them, today or however you choose. I just gave you a copy of what was presented last year, so you'd have a general idea of the language and what proclamations we had on the agenda.
Ty, do you think we can get through this in a matter of moments? Or do you need to give it some time?
So we kind of go, we give these thumbs up for the whole year now?
You don't have to give it for the whole year. I have them included. However you would like to. You can do it just for February, March, however you feel comfortable.
Well, I'm comfortable going through the entire list because
Okay.
it won't take that long, but
Okay, that's fine.
I defer to my seatmate, but at least you need at least February
Yes.
at the very least.
Commissioners, ideally will be for you to go through the list, give staff the perspective, so we have time to start preparing the proclamations as comes along. And also, just because you agree on a certain proclamation right now, that doesn't mean it will happen. You have the opportunity to review that, and also you have the opportunity to add any proclamations that come along your way. This is just to help us build the workload for the entire year. That's all it is.
Okay. Well, I'm in favor of at least giving you February, making a charge on charge on that topic. You go okay with February as Black History Month?
Yep.
Okay, there you go. February's done. And you want to wait on March then?
I'm looking them through. The only one that I had a question about in September, Attendance Awareness Month. What does that mean? Attendance where?
That's
At school?
Yeah, it's the school attendance.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. And we have a couple of school district representatives come and receive that proclamation.
Okay. Does it help you or hinder you if we wait until next time to discuss March? Probably
No, it
doesn't
doesn't.
hinder you.
It doesn't hinder me, no.
Okay.
We have plenty of time.
Then we'll give you February and we'll just wait on the rest and we'll weigh in.
Okay.
Thank you. Advisory boards and commissions. I did my homework and went through the list. And I don't know if my seatmates have had a chance to go through it. Have you gone through yours? Okay. And I don't know about Commissioner Edwards. He'll be just a couple minutes late. Should be any moment now.
I do know from last, when we reviewed this list on January the 8th, he was in favor of Ms. McClure. He felt that there were some members of the committee who were sending in support. Well, I have received that email, and there were 3 members of the committee that were in support of her appointment.
Right. So what
And
I
it's
want
in
to
the
do
packet.
yeah, I got that, and I'm going to defer until Commissioner Edwards arrives.
Okay.
That shouldn't take long to go through that. Any questions or comments on that? Okay. Briefing, public hearing decisions pending, the Nisqually Water Resources and the TST. Again, I'm going to wait for Commissioner Edwards for that so he can weigh in on those topics as well. Do you have something for legislative updates, Ramiro, and county manager report?
Yes, thank you, commissioners. As the legislative session started this week, I will provide you with some perspective of some of the bills that perhaps may have an influence, positive or negative, to the county. And as you know, in any legislative session, there are many bills that comes along your way. And along the way, also I'll provide some feedback, and I may ask you to participate in a couple of meetings with representatives to make the case of some of the county's legislative agenda. So to that effect, we have scheduled a meeting with Representative Wilcox on January 17th, this Thursday. From 2:15 to 2:30 in the afternoon. And he is going to be providing the county the opportunity to make the case for the 2 major legislative items, that is the court impact fees, and as well as the aggravated murder reimbursement. Staff from Superior Court is going to attend. We have a nice printout that I'll give you a copy of the court impact fees. And also we're preparing a 1-pager related to the aggravated murder reimbursement. Through the conversations, I think will be a great idea if one of the commissioners can attend this meeting. And I think that will bring importance in front of Representative Wilcox from the county's perspective. So I will ask what commissioner would like to attend this meeting. And again, Deborah Manguia will be leading the conversation overall. Superior Court will be leading the conversation in terms of the court impact fees. And also Deborah will lead the conversation on the aggravated murder reimbursement. But I think the shared presence, again, of a commissioner in this meeting, I think will bring value and added priority in front of Representative Wilcox.
And that's this Thursday at 14:15? Or this Thursday at 2:15?
Yes.
I'm scheduled to be in Lewis County at the Flood Authority, if it's possible for it not to be me
It's possible not to be you.
at this meeting.
And in the absence of Commissioner Edwards, I appear to be open.
Yeah. So let's plan on Commissioner Hutchins
Okay.
to attend that meeting, and I will let Deborah Manguia know, and so you can coordinate that. You may want to be there maybe a few minutes before the 2:15, just to
Yeah.
make sure we have the opportunity to touch
I have
base with
sufficient
Deborah.
time ahead of time. Will you let Kelly know so it magically just pops onto my phone?
I will.
Thank you.
Also, I'd like to provide you with an update. Last Friday, I had a meeting with Representative Dolio, and along with Deborah Manguia, the representatives from the Washington State Association of Counties, representatives from the City of Lacey, and representatives from the Association of Cities. And it was related to the proposed House Bill 2665 related to annexations. I believe you did provide some feedback on the proposed changes the county was proposing to this bill. The City of Lacey is proposing to introduce. Through the conversation, as expected, the cities were opposed to the proposed language, and really that meeting didn't go anywhere as a result of that. So I think we will continue to go through the process. I believe Representative Dolio is going to be sponsoring this bill as originally submitted by the City of Lacey, and we just have to go through that process. So we just have to see in what terms she be submitting the bill, and at that point I will give you some feedback at that point whether you like to support, oppose, or remain neutral on that particular bill.
So to recap, since Commissioner Everett just walked in, did you get that whole conversation on the annexation bill?
Didn't sound like she's going to give on it.
Like Lacey won't
And
agree with our wording changes.
Without getting too much into the details, the argument was that this was not the right statute to bring the islands. But my response to that was the proposed language, it deals with the islands specifically.
Right.
And it deals with the 45-day referendum related to islands. So from my point of view, it is appropriate to highlight the overall aspect dealing with islands, because there is a concern from the county, and I provided that example of the latest annexation at the intersection of Steilacoom Road and Marvin Road, where systematically start carving out developed areas, that if those annexations go through, those areas will never be annexed. And they keep using the City of Lacey, and the reason behind this legislation is the Capital City Golf Course. And they use as an example as to how they really addressing the islands. But it seems to me a little bit of a interesting approach, because I did ask him if that particular development didn't have a golf course and a restaurant, will you move forward with this annexation? So there is obvious, and I understand their City of Lacey's perspective, because they have to be looking for their own interest in terms of economic development and generating additional tax revenue. And that is quite all right. But also, I believe the county needs to be looking holistically as to how we're going to be left behind dealing with all developed areas within their UGA. And really addressing the islands as a whole, I think is the right time to do so, if that is the case.
Well, and it seems to me this is the right venue to do that in this legislation. I don't know if there's a more appropriate thing that the representative might be referring to. This isn't the right spot for it, then where would it go?
There were a couple of ideas to split this and maybe address the creation of islands in a different legislation. But when there is two pieces of legislation, you run the risk of one moves forward and the other one remains behind. And that's what I believe, and I stated on Friday, this is the right venue, this is the right legislation to address islands as a whole.
Okay.
So more to come on that.
Comments, questions?
I don't think so.
No, don't see what we can do right now. I would hope that the Association of Counties will work with us on this.
And,
Because it affects
they are aware.
It affects more than us.
Yeah. And I'm willing to take it to where it needs to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in terms of the overall, let me give you a brief report of some of the bills that are coming our way. Again, this is the first bill, this is the first report, and I'm going to give you at least a cursory review of some of the highlights. There are many, again, many, and included in your packet is all of those bills. There is a couple of bills. There's House Bill 1064 and Senate Bill 5029, which deals with concerning law enforcement. And this requires Criminal Justice Training Commission developing a curriculum to consider inclusion of alternatives to use of physical and deadly force so that de-escalation tactics and less lethal alternatives are part of the decision-making process leading up to the consideration of deadly force. You know, I was a little bit confused about this proposed bill since it was already an initiative that passed by the voters in November. So I don't know how that aligns. But anyway, so that is coming up. Also, on yesterday, there were already a public hearing related to the 2017-2019, the supplemental budget for the state. And I am not sure if the court impact fees will include it on the supplemental. So they are. So that's good news. So it's included in the supplemental, and also it's included on the 2021 budget, biennial budget.
Very
so that's
nice.
good. There's also another bill, Senate Bill 5106, and this is concerning the creation of a group study to make recommendations of natural disaster mitigations in reliance activities. That bill seems to be very solid, but again, it seems to be the legislature just creates a group and how this group is going to develop alternatives, so nothing tangible that I could see in this particular legislation. There is a 8 o'clock today was another work session related to annexations, and Deborah Manguia was going to be attending that. So that is going to be at the committee level. There is a House Bill 1003, and this related to citing of marijuana businesses in relation to areas and facilities frequently used by children. This particular legislation add two elements, preschools, which is not included in the current legislation, as well as bus stops to be included in the buffer. My perception, the preschools probably makes sense. The bus stops seems to be, because those are every 2 blocks. So if this legislation passes as is, nobody will be able to have a marijuana business. So more to come on that. House Bill 1110 is another attempt to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions related to transportation fuels, and this particular bill includes some reporting by year 2027 as to the effectiveness of this legislation. And there is also a public hearing tomorrow, 8 a.m., related to this House Bill 1086, and this is related to increasing appropriate funding for public defense services. Deborah Manguia is going to be attending, and I'd ask her to sign in support of this bill. This is part of our legislative authority. There is also two bills, Senate Bill 5063, this is related to providing prepaid postages for election ballots, and it's Senate Bill 5073, which also deals with reimbursement of election costs. And those two items are included in the county legislative agenda, and we'll be in support of that as it moves along.
Have you read either of those bills? Have you read either one of those?
I read the Reader's Digest of the bills, and that seems to be aligned with what the auditor, Mary Hall, is looking for.
So
and
it's
I believe she has worked with Senator Hunt, who I believe is going to be introducing those bills for consideration.
Good. So I haven't read them. Is it a phase-in or 100% we're going to fund it?
I think it's included on the upcoming biennium, 2022 full
Very
funding.
nice. Okay.
Can we go back one the bill about public defense funding?
Yeah.
Is there more to it than that? I mean, are they funding a certain aspect of public defense, or is it what are they funding exactly proposed?
Yep. Let me give you the details of that. So it requires a county or a city to provide documentation that attorneys providing public defense services in compliance with the state Supreme Court standards for indigent defense collect hours billed for non-public defense legal services in the previous calendar year for each individual organization that contracts to perform public defense services. Requires the Office of Public Defense to, one, annually determine the cost of public defense services based on an average of the actual expenditures of the services reported by counties and cities from the previous 2 years. Monitor trial level criminal public defense services to determine eligibility of counties and cities to receive state funding. Establish policies for the contribution of appropriate funding for eligible counties and cities. Requires counties and cities to annually provide information on the actual expenditures on public defense services to the Office of Public Defense. So what it does is it will be based on actuals, and the actuals will be submitted via report to the state public defense, and at that point will be reimbursed based on the actuals of the past year. So what I'm reading is not going to be a line item budget. It's going to be a pot of money, I assume. It is going to be given on a reimbursable basis.
Statewide.
Yeah, it's counties and cities, so it's statewide.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no just county, yeah.
So, yeah, that sounds pretty broad.
It's very broad, and yeah.
Anything else?
Also on the 18th at 8 a.m., there's a work session related to foundational public health, and we will see tracking on what is coming up out of those. Some other highlights: House Bill 1028, that's related to off-road vehicles for local governments, is just add a definition of the wheeled all-terrain vehicles to off-road vehicles. There seems to be a lot of work for just a single definition. But that's just my editorial comment. And House Bill 1015, that's related to GMA, focused on large counties. And what it does is modify the planning requirements. And it's a simple change. What they consider to be large counties for populations used to be 50,000. Now it's 75,000. So the threshold, proposed thresholds are increased.
The all-terrain vehicles, is that in line with what we did last year for the sheriff?
Yeah. Which is, I think in the ordinance you pass includes those vehicles anyways.
Okay.
The state law just allows that. Senate Bill 5008 related to short subdivisions. Right now we have considered in the definition of 5 lots. The proposal is to move to 9 lots. 9. Also, Senate Bill 5104, that is related prohibiting local governments from imposing vehicle tolls. And as currently we have, the local governments have the opportunity to implement vehicle tolling. I mean, if the physical circumstances allowed, this particular bill eliminates that option. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
And
Could you go back to that subdivision one from 5 to 9? How does that affect us?
it's just changing the definition for short subdivisions.
For a short plat?
Yeah, short plats, right now it's 5 lots, it goes up to 9 lots.
Okay.
And lastly, as part of my report, Senate Bill 5129, and this is related to increasing revenues for the state government. And this bill particularly deals with long-term capital gains, and I think that was submitted by the governor's office. Through my cursory review, there is nothing related to considering additional revenues for counties, once again.
Now, that was just a 2-page summary of what you had of the bills, the Senate and House bills. So it can't be that there's a ton of them flying around.
No, this is the highlights.
I'm looking for Senator Becker. Randy Becker has a mental health bill that went through code revision last week, and I'm meeting with her on Thursday regarding that bill, regarding mental health. I didn't know if that popped up on your radar at all.
Not that I have.
Okay.
Nothing related to mental health.
I'm not sure it'll impact the county as much, but I just need to find out And Kelly's looking for that too.
Oh, so I'll
Yeah,
wait until
looking
she's
for it.
done with the resort.
Thank
yeah.
you. Any other county manager update?
No, that's my update on the legislative portion of the agenda.
Do you have any other updates, or that's it?
That's it.
Okay. We're going to go backwards then, back to the future, talking about advisory boards and commissions. We waited until you got here to go through this list, Commissioner, of all the boards and
Okay.
commissions. Now we're going to start at the top with the Agriculture Advisory Committee. There are 2 vacancies, non-farmer.
Yes.
I can follow the script. And the one we had a question with, the applicant was Chiquita McClure, and we were waiting to get a resume.
I do have her resume is included in the packet. And Commissioner Edwards, I received an email from staff saying that there have been at least 3 members of the committee who have referred her.
Okay. Recommend her?
Recommended
Yeah,
her.
so
Okay.
you ready to jump on that one?
There's
Vote
only
up or down?
Only one applicant, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to go one by one?
Yeah, just one by one.
Okay. Well, I just want to put on the record, I'm not supporting this appointment. The reason is that about 18 months ago, Port Commissioner E.J. Zita was removed from the same committee. She's a local farmer, local landowner, sustainability expert, countywide elected official. I understand it's not exactly the same seat because there's farmer seats and non-farmer seats, but there was no persuasive reason offered for that removal that I ever heard. Now I'm being asked to put her opponent from the last Port campaign on that same committee. So there's a political dynamic to this that I'm not comfortable with. And I don't know the applicant. She doesn't seem, reviewing her credentials, she doesn't seem to have any particular qualification for the agricultural committee. She mentions being a small hobby farmer, but that's it. But based on the political dynamic that I'm just not familiar or comfortable with, I'm not going to support this. It's nothing personal against Ms. McClure. I don't know her. I've never met her. But I just wanted the public to understand why I'm not going to be supporting this.
Do you want a reason that that particular thing was done? Do you want to discuss that? I think we discussed at the time that we didn't want an elected official on any of these commissions that did not require an elected official, and I believe the reason for it was the undue influence that it wasn't that particular elected official, it was any elected official on any of these boards and commissions. So, with that being said, I would, if that's our only applicant, and that's been our only applicant for quite a while, so I would move to put her on there.
Thank you for explaining the rationale, because it was not any by name individual. It was a broad brush of elected officials.
Right.
Conflict of interest, maybe, maybe not, but an elected official having undue influence. And Chiquita, being a non-farmer, even though she is a hobby farmer, and I was looking at her leadership role, the leadership capabilities that she's had in the past with a number of awards and other prior employment, where she's been in a leadership role, and being recommended by 3 board members. I support her. I support her as well. So thumbs up or no?
I just want to say, I want to appreciate the explanation that it's not what was reported in the Olympian, and they don't always get it right, so I appreciate hearing from the horse's mouth. The Olympian reported a quote from somebody on the board saying that Commissioner Zita's views didn't align with the, wasn't in line with the views of the county commission, which made me feel like there was a political dynamic going on. So I appreciate the explanation. I'm ready to vote with that information.
Well, I'll just add with that comment that, and I've said it before and I'll say it many times again this year, I'm sure, where the Olympian might have an important voice, they're not definitive, to be sure. Commissioner Edwards, did you have something to add?
No.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd just like to,
Guerrero.
going back and attest the conversation that went through. As you might recall, it was really an attempt to eliminate perhaps the perceived influence of an elected official at that point. Whether that was the intended outcome, I cannot say. But then this particular appointment, I think that was the discussion. And if you like, I can probably provide the notes of that conversation at some point.
Are there any other elected officials on our many, many boards?
I don't recall to be in one of them, but personally, but yeah.
I would say, yes, there are other elected officials, but it requires an elected official on those particular boards.
Well, that's a differentiation, yeah.
Yeah.
You ready to go?
When the commissioners are part of boards and commissions, that's
Or
that's a little bit different.
city council people, or,
I meant ones that wouldn't be
Yeah,
required.
the ones that you appoint, because you. I don't
not
think-
that I'm aware of.
Because I don't think you have appointed any other
Yeah,
elected official.
not that I'm aware of either.
Yeah.
So ready to go thumbs up or down on
I-
Agricultural Advisory
Well,
Board?
I believe I have 2-1.
Okay. And you'll get a letter off to her.
Yes.
Number 2, Civil Service Commission. These are the next several are reappointments. Jennifer Roberts. She's currently on, and her term ends, I'm not going to go through the packet again, but ends coming up.
Yes.
And she's been on the board for a few years anyway, I believe.
I don't have her term date exactly, but she has been on the board, and she would like to continue.
I don't know Jennifer Roberts, but I haven't heard that we've got any problems or anything. And she's been willing to serve, and so I'd like to have her continue.
I'm much more deferential to reappointments because they've obviously been serving, they know the job, and I haven't heard anything negative, so I don't have any problem.
Okay,
Ms.
so
Roberts?
Jennifer Roberts, thumbs up?
Yep.
Thumbs up, thumbs up?
Yep.
Okay. Veterans Advisory Committee, Sean Smith.
I had the pleasure of attending the Veterans Advisory Committee meeting last night, saw Mr. Smith in action. I think he was running the meeting. Seemed like a great guy, very committed, and they were actually talking about how almost everyone they've had trouble getting people to come, a couple spots, and a couple of the other folks who do come consistently, our terms are coming up, and so I definitely think we want to keep, there's a particular reason why we would want to keep a person that wants to be re-upped, because they're going to have a number of vacancies and they don't have candidates, a queue of folks. They're going to be out looking to recruit new members, so I think it's important to keep Mr. Smith.
Okay. Comments?
Nope,
All right.
sounds good to me.
Thumbs up?
Mm-hmm.
Got 3 thumbs up. Agricultural Advisory Committee, Robert McIntosh, appointed back in 2010. Comments?
No, I really don't know Mr. McIntosh.
I don't know these folks either, but in going through and reviewing their
How many openings have we got on that committee?
I do apologize, I don't have the exact, well, wait, hold on.
No, you have down below.
2 vacant,
Yeah, it's somewhere here.
We have 2 vacancies,
yes.
and we have 1 application.
It's a
This
reappointment.
is a reappointment.
Yes,
And
but
we
I
only
mean,
have 1
but-
application, and there are 2 vacancies for non-farmer.
Okay, so there'll still be 1 vacancy if we make this appointment, if we reappoint.
Yes, because you're going with Juanita McClure,
No, well, okay.
so that takes one of the vacancies
Oh,
away.
I see, okay.
And so that'll leave you with 1 non-farmer vacancy.
Mr. McIntosh is a farmer spot, right?
Mr. McIntosh, yes, he's a tree farmer.
Okay, again,
You
I
ready?
go with him, yeah.
3 thumbs up, good. Agritourism, Juanita Towerman.
Terman.
Terman, appointed 4 years ago, is a reappointment, and I've gone through her. Have you gone through her repertoire?
Yeah, but I don't know her.
Yeah, I don't know any of these folks. Any, well, I do, coming up. Anything on Juanita?
No, seems like she has a lot of time. She's willing to vote, so I was supportive of her.
Okay. Thumbs up? We got 3 thumbs up for Juanita. Solid Waste Advisory, number 1 is Dave Watterson, City of Tenino. Go ahead, Gary.
On these particular, are we going to make these appointments, or are they sitting in as representatives from their particular municipality?
Yeah, this Solid Waste Advisory Committee is a little bit different. It's each city sends a representation.
And so these are the ones that, I guess what I'm getting at, this is an example of elected officials.
Yeah, and in this case, you really done, with all the respect.
We're just
you say,
reaffirming
and you're
their
just
nomination.
reaffirming that appointment, because under the conditions, and this is a statute-driven board, solid waste, it has a very specific membership described. So,
And in this case, the mayor of Tenino wrote a letter in support of
Yeah.
Dave. So
Dave.
anyway, I'm good with all of these.
Yeah, I support.
So that'd be all
they
3,
want the-
Watterson, Curry, and
Yeah.
Sinclair, Radcliffe Sinclair?
the one you have an option in a way is the Renee Radcliffe Sinclair.
Yeah.
That is a citizen's representative, and that is within your purview to review, that reappointment.
So I'm ready to go on all 3. Are you?
Yes, I got a report from the new chair of the committee who gave a big thumbs up to Ms. Sinclair. So
Oh, great. So 3 thumbs up for all 3? That's 9.
Sounds good.
Got it, done.
So, Commissioner, this may be a good point to talk about one of the items on your agenda today, is the representation from a county commissioner to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee.
Yeah.
As a matter of background, almost 2.5 years ago, the commission's changed via a resolution that the representation to this committee can be a county commissioner or a delegate. And since that occurred, Josh Cummins was the one who was attending the Solid Waste Advisory Committee meetings on behalf of the commissioner assigned to that committee. But since, I believe, he has a day job as a director of CPED, and I believe his attendance has not been as when you can. Thank you. So there was a request. I'd like to revisit that idea with the commissioners at this point, because this assignment, this committee was not part of your discussion when you went through all the different assignments. So the question before you is, if you would like to continue with a designee from the commissioners, and with them we have to find who that might be, or any of you will be interested in participating in this committee formally. So that's the question before you.
Okay. Gary?
I guess being both of you drew short straws as the assignments were handed out, I got less assignments, and I would offer that I would take this unless either one of you have a burning desire.
it's okay with me.
Done.
Okay, so Commissioner Edwards, and who is the alternate?
I can be alternate.
Okay. So Labonir, let's update for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, Commissioner Edwards will be the representative, and Commissioner Menzer will be the alternate. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And Ty. That also takes care of the agenda item, Commissioner item number 5. La Bonita, question for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We just did 8. Is that like a record? I think it's a
Yes.
record.
Very welcome.
Yeah, that catches us
Thank
up to date until next week.
Yes, it will.
Okay. Good.
And in your packet, under current vacancies, you will notice that I have the brief explanations of each one of the boards and commissions
that.
listed here.
Read that last evening.
Oh, thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you for the prompting. All right, so that's done on the agenda. Next is the briefing, public hearing decisions pending. Number one is Nisqually Water Resources Inventory Area. Someone please come to the table.
Yep. Let me frame it for you, Commissioners, while the staff comes to the table. This is related to the Hearst decision, and the Hearst decision has been a litigation that was put in place related to water quantity as a result of exempt wells. So back in the 2018 legislation, the legislature provided a quote-unquote a fix to the Hearst decision, which how that applies to Thurston County. It was divided into 5 WIRAs, water resource inventory areas. In each of those WIRAs, they had a maximum consumption gallons per day. And also each WIRA included a timeline that varies from 2019 to 2020, 21, I believe, where each of those watersheds need to come up with a mitigation plan as to how we need to address that. And this particular briefing last week was related to WIRA 11, that will be the Nisqually WIRA. And this one is the grant has a deadline of 2019, and I believe February 2019, where this group needs to submit a plan as to how we are going to be dealing with the water quantity of the exempt wells. Within that context, staff provided with some information related to this particular plan, and the staff is here to answer any question. The decision that you need before you is to give the director of CPED, Josh Cummins, delegation of authority to act on your behalf to approve this draft plan that needs to be submitted to the Department of Ecology. You heard last week, absent of having a consensus of all the many different stakeholders on this WIRA 11, then the Department of Ecology will have to develop their own plan. And the result of that, then the county will be, what I said, holding the bag in a way based on the decisions that the Department of Ecology may do. This particular draft plan may not address all the aspects, but I think it does an excellent job of striking a balance based on the parameters the state law has imposed to all the jurisdictions, including Thurston County.
Okay. Anything to add?
That pretty much sums it up. I guess the only 2 things to say in addition are this is the first step of many in this
Who are you?
Thank you. My name is Joshua Cummings. I'm the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you
And
for asking.
to your left.
Staff, go ahead.
Allison Osterberg, Senior Planner with Thurston County Community Planning.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Commissioner, Chair. The only 2 things I'd add are this is the first step in a mini process. As the county manager stated, this is one of many WIRAs, the Water Resource Inventory Area, that we're going to be discussing. And so this isn't the end. You're going to see this topic again and again and again. And just from our perspective in CPED, our staff, Allison Osterberg and Kevin Hansen and others, have dedicated a lot of time to making sure that the perspective of the commission that was provided to us has been voiced at the discussion of the building of this plan. So I have full confidence in the staff and the team and look forward to your direction.
Okay, and you need a decision, it looks like today.
Yeah, time is of the essence.
Okay, looking at the options, it seems that way as well, options 1 and 2. And before I ask you for a recommendation, let's just jump into it. Go ahead.
I guess if I had a suggestion, I would just suggest that I know the WIRAs are talking about quantity more than anything else, but I'd like to see that quality of water is also addressed during this process.
Okay.
So I don't have questions because I had a couple of additional briefings because of questions I had from your briefing last week. And I was initially concerned because this is a new bill, and I was wondering if the Streamflow Restoration Act is called, and I was wondering if it went far enough to protect our community's water resources. And the concern I had after last week's briefing was that I've been to 2 separate Department of Ecology presentations on the Streamflow Restoration Act, and knew that under their criteria for net ecological benefit, water for water mitigation was their priority to offset the impact of the permit exempt wells. And seems like your plan calls that micro mitigation, which was new terminology for me. But anyway, so the briefing we had last week, Allison had mentioned that the plan was trying to get away from water for mitigation, and that concerned me because in light of the briefings I'd had from ecology, I didn't understand what might be motivating that. So I asked for follow-up information, and I got it, and Allison, I appreciate the information she provided. I also got some information from Ms. Wilson, and I better understand now that this plan does involve some sort of some novel concepts, many of them originating with the Nisqually tribe in their approach and wanting to sort of expand the reach of the types of projects that can be viewed as mitigating for water quantity. But they're not motivated by any desire to endanger our water resources. We're looking more broadly at habitat restoration and salmon recovery strategies, what the plan calls macro mitigation. So I will support this plan given the compressed time frame, the hard work that the staff has obviously done. I looked at it as best I could. It's pretty complicated, and there's a lot of math in there. But obviously, you know, I have to rely on our staff to know that they're protecting our community's water resources. So I thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this process unrolls, because we're going to get, as I understand, this is going to be the first plan that Department of Ecology is going to review, and we're going to know kind of what the read is on these concepts that we're introducing. So
it seems, oh, go ahead, Romero.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective, and again, just following up on from my point of view, this is 3 components of this process. What you see before you is what I call is the what, is the draft plan. And then the follow-up will be the how this plan can be implemented. And then will be the who will be responsible behind all the different projects. And within the whole context and the how, there may be some good conversations related to the financial aspects supporting this particular plan. And then who will be the one entity following up and making sure that our implementation is in place. So this is just the beginning of the conversation, I believe. And as we move along, and again, from my point of view, this is probably the best possible balance based on the constraints the state legislature has put in front of us.
So my couple of just initial questions, and that is, number one, I'm going to presume that staff is recommending option 1.
Yes.
Okay, because option 1 is just full of, oh, that's good, that's good, that's good, sufficient time, input into the process. It just seems very logical to me. But number 2 is if we decline the offer or to support the plan, then we get steamrolled by the state, by ecology. And so my question is, whatever rules they enact, absent our input, they take effect in August. Is there any appeal of that? Is there any option for an appeal of that, of whatever they impart?
So we've had that conversation with our legal counsel in a way. His recommendation is that if this plan does not move forward as approved to ecology and ecology takes it on in rulemaking, that we as the county should still work to build our systems so that we'll have some legal case to stand on. But as the county manager has already stated, if this plan does not move forward as approved to ecology, we do lose a lot of control over the discussion.
Right.
If there's a case to counteract it, hard to say, but we will do our best to take that second path. You
did a brilliant job in laying all that out, especially with the timelines for this. I appreciate that.
My past experience in rulemaking, it becomes a little more complicated. It's not really a formal appeal process. What you have is an option for a review of a rulemaking, and that has to go up to the state.
That's
So
right.
it's a very formal legal review that you request to the State Attorney General's office for the review of that rulemaking.
Okay.
So there's not really an appeal per se on this process.
All right.
Can I ask a quick procedural question? These briefing sheets, when, should I have had this before this morning?
Yeah, it was provided to you last week as part of the briefing.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay. I missed it. Somebody went to a lot of work, and I wish.
Oh, it's brilliant. It really is.
That's every single briefing that comes to the commissioners have the same format.
So this was given out at the last briefing of this, on this issue?
Yeah.
Okay, so I had it somewhere.
So my question now is, any other input?
No, other than it's the fire hose concept that you're up against.
Is the board ready to make a decision on which option? Because the staff needs to know today.
I'm ready.
I'm ready. All right. Ann? Thumbs up, down?
Recommendation.
Option one.
Option one. Golden.
Let's, for the record, let's verbalize what option one is.
Okay.
Thank you.
So option one is for you to, is delegating the authority to Josh Cummings, the director of CPED, to, at the upcoming meeting, to endorse the draft plan for WIRA number 11.
Thank you.
Nothing else?
We're good.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
She's a rock star. Yeah. Next, we have, under the briefing, the public hearing decisions, is the treatment sales tax.
Thank you, Commissioners. Last week, also you received a briefing related to the treatment sales tax. And Carrie Hennon and Shelley Slater are here to answer any questions. This is the time of the year that we need to go, the county needs to go with a request for proposals for community grants related to this particular funding source. The allocated budget for 2019 is $250,000. And on the presentation you received from Carrie, there were two remaining questions. One is whether you would like to include the request for proposals within specific areas of interest, meaning youth and family programs, veterans, jail diversion, or recently public health crisis, or you would like to go with a broader request for proposals. That is the question number one for you.
And again, this is treatment, not prevention.
Yes.
Is the treatment sales tax.
Treatment, not prevention. Not our limitation, state's limitation. Treatment,
Yes.
not prevention.
Right.
Go ahead.
I would like to add to that, at some point, I would like to hear what other jurisdictions are doing in regard to the prevention treatment portion of it. Some are taking a little more liberty than others, and maybe you could let us know, as an example, which ones are doing that, and if in fact they've been successful as far as challenges or what. It might give us some leeway.
Just by way of clarification, are you talking about regarding youth and family or veterans or jail diversion or everything?
Yeah, just everything. I know,
Overall.
I think Kitsap County maybe is doing something different, Skagit County is doing something different. Just a little more leeway
Okay.
on not being quite so restrictive when we get into the prevention aspect of things.
If I remember this from many, many
Few days
briefings
ago,
ago, this is like one small piece of your overall funding, and we asked a lot of questions and I was persuaded that we should keep it broad, not limit the types of programs that could apply. That was my perspective.
That was my suggestion,
Who
just
might you
because
be?
it is this small.
Who might you be? Who might you be?
My name is Carrie Hennon. I'm the program manager for treatment sales tax. I work at Thurston County Public Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Carrie.
And my recommendation was to invite any TST eligible proposal. In the past, there's been focus areas identified, but because this is sort of the one and only shot that the broader community has at TST funds, and it's a small slice of the overall funding, most of it goes out through county offices and departments, it made sense to me to give any creative, innovative, TST-eligible program the opportunity to apply.
So you know when, I'm going to go back just a bit. When my 35-year-old daughter was just a child, kids want everything for Christmas, everything. So an advert came on television, some commercial, and she said, "Oh, I want that." And it was a washer and dryer. And so when I look at this list, my first thought was, any eligibility, okay, that's good. Youth and family, yes, I want youth and family. Wait a minute, veterans, what jail diversion, that impacts budget and people. Then I saw, opioids and homelessness. I go, where do you begin? When you get a Christmas list, and so, but this is, when I look at youth and family and homelessness, if we're talking about treatments, the same thing. Opioids and families and youth, the same thing, kinda, depending on what the service provider wants or can provide, or what they apply for.
So, I mean, it's really a question of how it's framed in the RFP. I feel fairly confident that even if an RFP didn't identify a particular focus area, you will see proposals, certainly on youth and families. I bet you'll see things on opioids. I would guess you'd see things that touch the housing and homelessness issue. So it's a question of whether you want to decide now or decide later. Like, do you want to decide right now, I really only want to see category X within the TST universe, or do you want to see everything, have them rated, have a recommendation from a panel, and decide then?
When mental health covers every one of these topics.
Well, and that's part of the TST eligible language.
Right.
So the TST eligible language means it's going to be mental health or substance use related.
Well, and I like what Ty said about, and I agree with that, a more broad approach, all encompassing, because you're going to discern anyway and narrow it down. I wouldn't want to I don't think I want to limit it, but that's just me.
Upfront. You mentioned last year's cycle was youth and family focused. Is that what you said?
Youth and family and veterans were called out.
Okay.
Gary, anything? So I don't want a washer and dryer. So do you have what you need then for moving forward to?
That was question number one.
The question number two is whether you like to consider a single year, 2018, or you would like to go with a 2-year, a biennial RFP.
Go ahead.
I only want to do it for one.
I was persuaded that you explained at the briefing that it takes programs to get up and running and then to hit the groove and then see what your results are. And so I was persuaded that 2 years made sense, but I could be talked out of that. Commissioner.
There's a reason for it.
It's predictable for the nonprofit or service provider. Is it also, it's $250 for the biennium or $250 each?
So the adopted budget has $250 per year for 2019 and 2020.
Yeah, I for 2. 1, 2, 2?
2.
Okay.
2 wins.
Okay.
You got what you needed?
I think so.
Shelley, you're done?
I guess regarding Commissioner Edwards' request on prevention and other counties, we did compile, I talked to basically all of our peer counties, the larger counties and the mid-sized counties, and compiled that last year. We did do a briefing on that. I can schedule a briefing
No, I don't know
similar
if we
and
need a
follow up.
briefing, maybe just a refreshing.
Let's apply for a follow-up.
Yeah, maybe a little follow-up for our
Okay.
seatmates.
Follow up in what format? Or
Benefit.
I can ask you later.
Yeah, let's talk.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Now, we're about 40 seconds away from 10 a.m., and mindful of staff, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll convene at 10:10. No, yeah, 10:10. Thank you. Mic's off.
Oh, boy.
Are we on, Megan? Yep. Okay. All right, welcome back. 10:10 still. And we're going to continue on with the agenda setting work session. We're down to PIO check-in. And what might the PIO have for us today?
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
Just a couple of updates. Brian has completed the draft of the continuity of operations plan for the Board of County Commissioners office. I've done an initial review on it. He's going to make a few updates and then we'll get it to Ramiro probably by the end of this week for Ramiro's review. Brian and I have been meeting with office directors and we have scheduled meetings with all the rest of the office directors. We're talking about communications needs, how we can help them tell the story of what they're doing. A lot of the focus has been around, we want people to know what our people are doing and who our people are, which I think is great because that's, the citizens like to see the human aspect of what we do. And so giving them, highlighting a job and showing the people who actually do that job is a great way of telling the story of what the county actually does. And so it's kind of validating what Brian and I had initially thought that we would want to make sure that we're focusing on over this coming year for our communications. And so more to come on that. And then the 2 p.m. meeting this afternoon about the Courthouse and Civic Center project. That's gonna we had a discussion about the name earlier. So that's going to shine a little light on what communications activities are going to be coming up on that. I think once a decision's made, it's going to be a lot of communications work around getting the information about the project out there to the citizens. And then we're working with Patrick O'Connor and Michelle Underwood to develop a one-pager around extraordinary case costs. And we'll have a draft of that to Ramiro today. So, any questions?
Questions of PIO? Questions? Ty?
Not this time.
If you're thinking of one, or if you are going to think of one, I'm going to ask if this would be the best time to have you expound a bit on what our conversation was earlier regarding courthouse / civic complex or civic center.
Would you like me to? I'd be happy to.
I would. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Please. This would be good. We'll do it again this afternoon. But
Okay.
I'd like to hear it now. For people to hear it.
So over the outreach of announcing this project to citizens, we received a lot of feedback through open houses, through the surveys, on comments on social media about the name Civic Center, about including the term Civic Center within this project name. And I've also received feedback from staff as well about people don't understand what a civic center, what that means, and so they're instantly thinking it's a convention center or opening it up, making big rooms for conferences or things like that, and it's not necessarily related to county business. When we're using the term civic center, we mean Board of County Commissioners, auditors, assessors, treasurers, so the more administrative side is not just the courts. And so I received that feedback and I provided you with that feedback, and so we had a little discussion about what we want to do with that.
And to kind of put that in context, last year, and I had a discussion with Patrick O'Connor, Director of Public Defense, and it was surrounding the topic. And in my circles and perhaps his circles, when you talk about courthouse, it meant the courthouse. And the general public don't have much dealings with the courthouse. So what do they care if we have new judges, chambers, and new this, new that? So I was opting along with Patrick for calling it like a civic complex where people could, it's the center of the civic government where they can address and redress their government because it's more than just a courthouse and juries and trials. But now I'm hearing that the general public does not have that perception.
From the feedback that we've received, and what that's limited to is the people who are being engaged at this point. I think it warrants asking the public, you know, what would you like to see this named? But people are still, I'm getting comments on Facebook, oh, you're still calling it a civic center, huh? And that, so it's trying to answer that, say, you know, this is not the final name that we have for this
Okay.
project or for the buildings. This is just what we're calling it at this point, and we'll be asking the citizens.
And this is getting somewhat confused with the BoCC last year
Yes.
or the year before,
I think 2
trying to
years
do a
ago.
conference center
Convention center, yeah.
that didn't go anywhere just yet. And so people are thinking, perhaps we're trying to slide something in. I'm telling the
Yes.
cameras right now, that's not the case. There's nothing underhanded going on here at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
So that was the conversation that we had this morning about that.
It's not an overwhelming amount of people, but it's a consistent message.
Right, okay. Ty, you had something?
Well, just,
first?
I mean, again, it's like trying to brand it as like a name versus just getting people to understand the concept. Those are kind of two different things.
Yes.
And Civic Center has a, you know, it's whatever, alliterative and it sounds smooth, but if it's confusing, you know, it's really county administration in
Yes.
courthouse. I mean, that doesn't sound as nice,
Smooth.
but in terms of getting people to understand what it is we're asking them to consider,
Yes.
that may be a better phraseology. And then when we actually come up with a real name for it, it could be something different that doesn't involve Civic Center. Because some people think that's a basketball arena.
Exactly.
Or a,
Exactly.
you know,
Yes.
Right, exactly.
It's
And
confused with convention.
administration is softer than courthouse and government.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Commissioner.
I guess what I have heard is, I would label that attempt at a convention center as a super flop, to be honest with you, from 2017. And I do think that now people, they equate the two kind of together. That's what I've heard. At the same time, I've heard, don't put it downtown. I don't know why, I'm just going to throw that in there. I mean, what's this business about a convention center and courthouse? They get it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. At the same time, I'm not hearing very much in the line of positive comment on the whole thing. I really think Thurston County Courthouse says it all. It's pretty simple. It's the history of what the Thurston County Courthouse entails. Everybody seems to know that that does mean county business.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hearing.
Romero.
Yeah, I encourage the commissioners to, at this point, to maybe focus on the first big step. And this is the perhaps the selection of one of the three options there is before you. We have a follow-up meeting this afternoon where you have the opportunity to hear from your elected officials, the City of Olympia, as well as your directors. And then you will have the opportunity to talk among yourselves among the different options. Yeah. Related to the name of this particular facility, that has to be part of the messaging that comes later. And I believe that we need to take time, we, meaning staff and you as elected officials, really start looking at what will be the most effective message the public can understand. And all of us have to be applied that consistency as we move along, perhaps, when and if this goes to in front of the voters. So I believe that is important, the name, but I believe the messaging goes beyond just the name of a project. So that is the next steps that perhaps you may consider after the first big task before you is completed.
Got it. Thank you, Megan Porter. Anything further? That's it?
That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Commissioner items, CSA building. No, I'm going to take the prerogative of moving number 1 under commissioner items. I'm going to move number 3 to number 1, the homeless crisis. Take that on first. And the letter to the governor.
Yeah, this is you received some public testimony last week during your Board of County Commissioners from citizens. And the gist of their testimony was to encourage the commission to write a letter to the governor's office for the governor to declare homelessness as a crisis across the state. And one of the public testimonies, they provided you with a form copy of a letter. Some of the jurisdictions up north, which includes Auburn, Federal Way, Vancouver, Tacoma, there's a lot of cities, not necessarily counties on this letter, they submitted a letter on March 2016 to Governor Jay Inslee, specifically asking that with additional information related to specific funding. So I'd just like to bring this to your attention for you to have a broad conversation, whether this is something you may consider. Shelley is here to facilitate also the conversation, and it's really, I think, the homelessness is a difficult issue, as stated on the board meeting last week, that requires perhaps a regional perspective, and how we're going to go about really is going to be one of the challenges that perhaps you as a Board of County Commissioners, and we as administrators, is in front of us. So that is really the frame work of this discussion.
Is there anything in our packet regarding this?
Yeah, it's a copy of the letter.
What's it look like? What's the front? Okay. Oh, that one. Okay, okay. There we go. I thought those were just adverts on the top. Have you had a chance to see this or read the letter?
I've not read it.
Let's just take just a moment.
I'm not suggesting that we should submit a letter similar to this. I think the question before you is, will you be interested?
Oh, if we're interested in doing this. I thought we already decided we would. We were interested.
I don't believe I received that direction from the board.
Oh. Okay. Does this, the governor elevated this to a state of, or a declaration of crisis, not a state of emergency, but declaration of a crisis statewide. Does that leverage anything for Thurston County monetarily? I know the answer is going to be no, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Shelley Slaughter, Director of Thurston County Public Health and Social Services, and I know that this issue is part of the governor's budget priority for this upcoming year. As far as whether it's declared a crisis or not, and how resources flow, I think that is not something that we can answer. For example, the governor did declare the opioid crisis an emergency last year, and as a result, since then, there has been more targeted resources and joint efforts to focus on the opioid crisis. I think that we know from our data from last year, and the governor has recognized in multiple meetings and conferences that Governor Inslee has held, that we have a huge growing problem of homelessness across the whole state of Washington. I think that's widely acknowledged. The state of Washington just released their strategic plan last year, and our local Thurston County homeless plan was based upon the state strategic plan. Our point in time count, as you discussed at your last meeting, is coming up in just next week, actually, or 2 weeks. And I think that we will have data, more data that will tell a bigger picture across the whole state and the country once we conduct that census. And I think that is going to show a deepening crisis.
Okay. Question or comment?
I have two reactions to this concept. One is, what's impressive about this letter is the number of signatures and the variety of towns, and it cuts across. We've got Vancouver, Tacoma, Bellingham, a big wide region of Western Washington jurisdiction. So if we were going to, I don't know why Thurston County was skipped over, or if it was, but it would, if we had it, to me it would, because this exists, it could have some force to have a similar letter that involves our local jurisdictions, not just this board, but Olympia, Lacey, Shelton, whoever. On the other hand, my second reaction to it is that we have so many. I want to make sure we're spending our time focusing on what we're going to do here versus spending a lot of time debating what we're going to ask the governor to do, and he may toss this in the thing. I mean, just as an example, I spent a lot of time understanding that annexation bill, going through with staff, getting private briefings, crafting an additional language to make that seem fair proposal to me, and you just reported this morning that it was just basically went nowhere. So to spend a lot of time crafting something that's really out of our hands, I'd rather spend our time working on the things that are in our hands, which is our ability to respond directly and locally. So if this can be done quickly and efficiently, and we can get local jurisdictions to sign off, I'm more than willing, because it makes sense. But I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, because we have a huge burden in front of us to plan our own strategy toward this issue.
And related to that, Commissioner Menzer, I have already scheduled a planning session on February 7th. That's already on your calendars, and the focal point of that session will be this particular topic. Even a whole day may not be enough, but I think it's a good opportunity for you to start having those conversations. And you will hear, and you know, at this point, some of the suggestions will be is we need to find additional mitigation sites. And that has to be part of the solution, but not necessarily perhaps maybe the solution. But how the county can participate and be part of the solution is the question that perhaps hopefully we can start finding an answer as a result of the February 7th planning session that I have scheduled. So Shelley and I will develop an agenda for that meeting. But again, it's really an opportunity for the three of you to start talking about this particular matter.
Yes, and I will also say Thurston County is a member of the Washington State Housing Alliance, which is advocating for additional funding to alleviate some of the homeless issues within counties and cities throughout our state, and also WASALFO, WASAC, Association of County Human Services, all have this on their radar. As far as the other human services agencies and public health, there are conversations happening on how we can better coordinate at a state level on this issue.
And so this is the session I was asking for, that topic at that session, the homelessness.
The planning session?
The planning session, to bring in legal as well, to see what resources, see what we should do, what we can do, what we should not do, what we need to avoid, and the gaps and such.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is the intent of that.
Yeah, because this is obviously elevated to the point where it needs to be done, it needs to be planned, something needs to be, everybody needs to be engaged in this.
Yeah,
So going back to this.
Going back to the letter, and it's just I read the letter, I think is very pointed. But I think whereas, and this is just my reaction, is I think it is a gap on this letter. Let me tell you why. Because this letter is signed only by cities.
Is what?
Signed by cities, no counties. So it appears to you in this letter that is a city issue. But I think it is a regional issue. And the counties needs to be part of that. So I really like the idea, if the commissioners would like to have a letter like this, to have a regional letter that includes cities and county, because that really brings the voice, if that is the case. Because this is what is missing in this letter.
You're right.
Is to bring the counties into perspective that in fact it is a regional issue, not just a city issue. So.
I think the Washington State Association of Cities was involved in coordinating that and had held the session on that at that time.
So I agree with that. It needs to be cities and county in the letter. And you'll craft the letter? Do you agree there should be a letter sent?
I'm okay with the letter. It has to read right. I don't know what
Yeah.
the letter's going to say yet.
I don't either.
Yeah, so then I will ask Shelley to draft a letter. We'll coordinate with the cities.
Okay.
It'll come to us for review and such, and then get
Obviously,
pushed out again.
Yeah, because you'll
Okay.
be a signature. I think it will be a signature from the chair of the board at that time, maybe from the mayors,
Okay.
as opposed to every single elected official. That would be
I may suggest that after the point in time count, we'll have more relevant data to share that could be more effective. But it does take us a little bit of time to to certify that data, but we can at least have a preliminary sense soon after the count that
Okay.
could, I think, give a little more credibility to that letter.
Commissioner Edwards.
I'd ask the county manager this. Where are we at on the auxiliary dwelling units, or I guess that's what it is?
ADUs?
ADUs, as far as creating affordable housing. Is that something that's coming up? I mean, we often hear that the regulatory aspect is about 25% of the cost of housing. Possibly ADUs could alleviate some issues of expensive housing. Where are we at in that from a kind of a team perspective? Because I think the municipalities are looking at it.
Right.
Where are we at?
That is part of your comp plan amendment, and it is included in the scope of work that staff is working on. Maybe I can probably give you, Josh, to come to the table and give you perspective as to the schedule, as to when you will see the comp plan amendment, which includes the ADUs.
Hello, Joshua Cummings again, the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. So in terms of your question, I think that's an excellent way to be thinking of the accessory dwelling units, ADUs, in terms of the timing for the comp plan. So we've got a briefing, what's today, Tuesday? So Wednesday afternoon, tomorrow afternoon, with an overview of CPED, and then after that, we'll go through a list of the follow-on briefings on the specific topics. Comp plan will be one of those. And so the hope is that by mid-February, we've got the comp plan coming to you so that this board can understand what's all on the comp plan, and then to receive direction on what you'd like staff to be working on as priorities. So the goal is mid-February on that discussion. And I think that's an interesting concept to kind of look at the ADU discussion on that again with this lens of homelessness. So we'll check in with staff on that to provide more information.
Good, thank you. Go ahead.
And I guess I would just mention that there's a case of, I guess, bureaucracy getting in the way of solutions, because I think we're only allowed to make adjustments to that comp plan once a year, so that's late in the fall or something that we're even going to be able to address it no matter what we do. So those are the kind of things the legislature could amend to allow other government entities that want to come up with solutions. You know, it doesn't cost the legislature a thing to amend that. And possibly we could have some additional dwelling units. And I don't know if it applies only to the urban growth area, or does it apply to the rest of the county? And how does that connect with the municipalities of each one of those urban growth areas?
Go ahead.
I'd gotten some input in transition about some concerns about the county's ADU policy, and specifically in the county area, and how it could be ironed out a little smoother. So that's something we should look at, just to make sure it makes sense through the lens of homelessness, as well as just good, consistent policy.
And I believe that is the intent, because it's a little bit cumbersome what we have right now. But I'd like to go back, and I think to Commissioner Edwards' comment, I agree, because the restrictions of only having 1 year opportunity to amend becomes difficult. That's GMA requirements, and I think all of us can probably agree the legislature should allow to review GMA and determine their effectiveness. Is over 28-year plan. It was enacted in 1990, and I think it is timely just to revisit some of those assumptions made over 25 years ago, and through that review, say yes, continue to be effective, no, some revisions, but I think it's time to go through GMA at a statewide level and see its effectiveness.
I would just comment that the Ruckle House study is supposedly going to address this, and that's going to be presented to the legislature later this year. Now, I don't know what all those solutions are, but for those of you that might be following the Ruckle House group, and they were commissioned by the legislature to come up with these answers. So hopefully we'll get some common sense thrown into a bureaucratic nightmare.
Robin, did you have something?
I did, and this was just to follow on to Shelley's suggestion that we wait until we have some data from the point in time count. I think that that's a very valuable thing to have, but I also think that we have to be careful of timing, because even if this letter is going to the governor asking for his support, it's the legislature that has to appropriate funds, even when the governor declares an emergency. So we will want to make sure that our letter goes timely to get to the legislature as they consider appropriations. And that's going to happen pretty fast.
Okay.
Yes, that is true. And we do have sufficient data even from last year with our 40% increase in 1 year to be able to substantiate that this is a crisis that is impacting us, and the Board of Health has declared that already. So it wouldn't prohibit us from doing a letter sooner.
Right.
Anything further?
I would just point out, I didn't see this at first. This letter is March 2nd, 2016. So
Right.
even if we sent a letter with last year's data, it's an update and a re-up from this. So I don't want to miss deadlines for having effectiveness.
One other just comment on the code issues. The city of Olympia and I believe the city of Lacey have been examining their current code for temporary housing or temporary encampments and sheltering. And I met with one city of Olympia council member, and I shared that with Romero. And they're curious as to what the county may consider to be able to expand the essentially expand potential mitigation sites or encampments, and what kind, and to examine what kind of code changes could be possible to support that and to align the city's codes with ours. So that was not a formal request by the city council, but just one conversation with one member and staff that forwarded me information. So just wanted to share that with you, and perhaps that could be further discussed at our February 7th session.
Go ahead.
Is there any chance that we could have at least representation from the municipalities that are, at least Olympia, on when we do have our discussion, so that we can at least ask them, is this what you're doing, or does this fit in with what you're doing, that kind of thing? Are we going to have, is it just going to be the 3 board members and some staff, or is it going to be?
That meeting is open to the public, and as you as a board can decide who you
Well,
would
sitting
like
in
to
on
invite.
it is one thing, and participating is another thing. I just almost think that if we're going to coordinate, we're talking about coordinating with the municipalities. We need to start somewhere. And if we're going to have a day-long session, I think they need to be at least in the room as a participant rather than an observer.
Yeah, certainly you can ask the City of Olympia to participate, but just like to remind you that you as a board, this is the first day that you will have the opportunity to talk among yourselves about this issue. So if that is the right setting, and for you as a board to first start getting into this wheel moving to see how the level of participation of the county has, if you want the city at that time, that's entirely up to you. Who you want to invite. So, and this is, from my point of view, this is the first time that you will have a 6 hours session in which you can specifically talk about this matter in depth. So,
Jeff, follow
Yeah,
up.
we'll be talking amongst ourselves, but in public.
yeah,
I'd like to make
Yeah.
sure the public
it's open
is
to
very
the
much
public.
aware of that.
You don't have secret meetings.
Yeah.
I agree with Commissioner Edwards, and I would say if we had morning session and then first thing after lunch, if we could just have an Olympia person there, because we're going to have ideas that we don't know if they conflict or they're feasible. Obviously, Olympia is going to be part and parcel of, and then a later, maybe a follow-up meeting, then we get Lacey and, we come up sort of a hopefully we finish that day with an action items, and then we can get Olympian Tumwater Lacey to the table. But I agree that what I'm saying is I agree that somewhere in that first day, we're going to have questions that only Olympia can answer. So letting them know that we're doing this and, kind of having an appropriate representative from staff or city council, I don't really care. Just somebody that we can bounce out just for an hour maybe, right after lunch. And then we can kind of mull on that and chew on that among ourselves. But I think we're gonna hit a lot of dead ends quickly if we don't have input from Olympia.
Yeah, this is your planning session. However you want to structure it, we'll structure it.
Let me tell you, I agree to include Olympia, either council or staff, a representative, but I know it's going to chew up a lot of time, but they need to be involved in the process initially. And I don't know where that issue of homelessness is on the agenda, but I prefer to hit it earlier. I would hate to discuss homelessness on a full stomach. That just kind of doesn't set well with me. And I want to be alive and invigorated, so I'm thinking earlier in the morning for the first couple hours or few hours. But we do need to follow up just the commissioners, but we also need to follow up to include the other cities as well.
So, help me understand how you like to structure that agenda.
I prefer to have that issue done first straight away in the morning.
What I'm planning to have is one single issue all day for you to discuss.
Then I'd bring City of Olympia in right away. I would invite them to come, again, council member or staff.
Maybe it's Colin, the homeless coordinator. He should have his finger on the pulse of their strategies.
But I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, anybody that has the answers that we want.
Or in conjunction with an elected policymaker. I would. And we're going to devote sufficient time to this issue. No, but we do need time alone, public of course, but to discuss it, but also with the other two other cities as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what I get is on the planning session scheduled for February 7th, you would like a representative from the City of Olympia to participate in the discussion.
Yes.
So we'll plan on that.
Okay. I believe also that there is a desire for the entire City of Olympia Council to have a meeting with commissioners. I have heard that at a couple different times. And there was a housing summit back in August that was convened by the Thurston County Chamber Foundation via Thurston Thrives. And I know that there was a desire to have follow-up meetings to that to include all of the other jurisdictions to meet together on this issue too. So I think there are multiple opportunities for meetings and ways in which we can work together, including and beyond this work session.
And we'll have legal there on Thursday the 7th also, or whenever that is. 7th.
We'll have. We'll ask Elizabeth to attend. But as you know,
not for the whole day.
I think you have experienced that an attorney cannot provide you, legal advice in a 5-minute dissertation, particularly with having a City of Olympia there.
Then maybe
I think it's good to have a conversation, perhaps some action items that we need to explore, and maybe some action items may include a legal review of some of the proposals that you may come up with.
Good, okay.
But I encourage you not to get to the point of having a legal opinion and a 5-minute dissertation, because that's not valuable to where you want to accomplish.
Okay. And that was my concern, is we might come up with a ton of ideas and wow, this sounds really good, and then have someone down the road say, well, you just can't do that.
And knowing your attorneys, they will let you know they need more time to provide you with a legal opinion anyways.
Then forget, we can't have legal staff there, for 2, 3, or 4 hours.
I will ask him to attend, but yeah.
Okay. As for the letter, you got what you needed?
Yeah, I think we do.
And point in time, that's the 24th of this month.
Yes.
Are you, for the county, are you like the go-to person if someone wanted to sign up or volunteer?
I am not the go-to person for that, but I can connect anyone who's interested with the person that is, and you can register online, and I believe all of you have all been registered already based upon our last
I want to
conversation.
add, just real quick, I want to add that in the past, and potentially this year, our Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization, the BHO, has participated in the point-in-time count as well.
And hopefully today I will be sending an email to county staff to see if they'd like to volunteer using their community day. Obviously after approval of their supervisor, to see if they'd like to participate on this. So I'll be sending an email today.
And thus far, you have the 3 commissioners and you, Romero?
Yes.
Signed up?
Yes.
To participate.
Yes.
All right, anything?
Pick me.
Anything? Yeah, okay. Done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Josh and Shelley. Takes care of number 3. Now let's go to number 1, the CSA building.
Commissioner, maybe
Yes.
since Shelley is right there, you
Oh,
want
wait,
to
right
touch
here.
base
What's
on
the
the
other one?
sidewalk request?
Sidewalk, number 4.
And this is a follow-up to last week's agenda setting where you review a letter that you received back in January 4, 2019 from the Sidewalk Organization outlining the need of $40,000. And this is really what there is in their statement on the letter mentioned that perhaps without the $40,000 they may be critical and vital for them to continue the services. And as a result of the conversation last week, you asked Shelley to have a conversation with the organization to get additional information and more perspective as to the actual need of that request, because that request also went to all the 2 cities, Lacey and Olympia as well.
Yes. So I did have a follow-up conversation with Mr. Phil Owen, who is the executive director of Sidewalk. And there is a request to the other jurisdictions to help provide funding for their immediate financial crisis. How I better understand the financial crisis as it stands is the $40,000 that they need is for the month of February only, that amount of cash would only get them through February. Their need to sustain operations beyond 1 month is far greater than that, in the hundreds of thousands. And so they are trying to work on a financial sustainability plan to figure that out. We also had conversations about existing contracts that we have with the organization and compliance and cash flow. And the outcome of the conversation that we had is I've requested the most recent financial statements so that we can review that and better understand their request and how it ties to coordinated entry. We do not fund Sidewalk directly for coordinated entry. We fund the lead coordinated entry, and as I explained last time, they are a subrecipient of those funds. They also have contracts for rapid rehousing and diversion. While they have balance on those contracts, they're unable to disperse any of those funds because they do not have the cash flow to distribute those funds without immediate reimbursement. So essentially, we're still in progress of talking to Sidewalk and figuring out how best we can support them. As far as our funding at the county, we do not currently have emergency funds available. The board typically sets aside an annual amount, and a couple months ago, you distributed those funds to support the emergencies that Interfaith Works and the Community Care Center in downtown Olympia and the Salvation Army organization were having. So there is not emergency funding available. Our next RFP process is scheduled to begin at the end of February with new contracts and funding available not starting until July. So with our existing funding, we do not have additional funds available. So we would if the board was interested in providing assistance to Sidewalk, we would have to evaluate where and how we would find funds to help them with this. My understanding is that Sidewalk is giving presentations to the city councils to ask for funds and trying to parcel together different amounts from different agencies to try to continue not just the coordinated entry program, but the entire organization is facing a financial crisis that's so deep that they may close within 30 days.
So sorry here.
Go ahead.
It sounds as if we're trying to put a Band-Aid, or they're trying to put a Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound. And I don't know if they're just going to government looking for funding or if they're going to philanthropy. I would imagine they're going outwards trying to find sustainable funding, because I'm not sure even Thurston County governments as a whole would be able to sustain that kind of a request. And on one hand, I was thinking, as soon as you brought up the emergency funds, I know we spent it on something, and it was the Salvation Army, Interfaith Works, and something else, because they needed assistance right away, and it was nice that we had the money to do that. It's concerning because of the work that they do, as you stated. And you're going to look further into their financials?
Yes, because I needed to better understand what their current situation was, because we also knew that they have balance on existing contracts that hadn't been invoiced yet, and so we were trying to really evaluate what the exact need is and to be able to tie that to the program of which the request is being made for.
So it seems to me that one of the obvious questions is to ask, or is to discern, how did we get here? How did they get here? Whenever we get sick, oh yeah, I got it from him, or I got it from her. You know, you want to find, not blame, but find out what's the cause. So we need to find out why, how they got there, what would prevent that from happening again.
Mr. Owen indicated that their organization has been operating at a loss for the last 2 years. So I don't know to the extent of those reasons.
And a concern, of course, is supporting a nonprofit. There's going to be opening the door for
So it is, if I may, it is, listening to additional information that Shelley provided, and you receive a letter dated January 4, 2019, where they give somewhat of less than 30 days to perhaps you may considering a financial package, where this, it appears to be a systemic issue that has been in the works for 2 years. I'm just curious, really, and now even with additional information that is, no, the $40,000 only for 1 month, because the gap is even deeper. I think you raise questions about the timing and perhaps the proactiveness of looking at their financials in the last couple of years.
So I have this sheet of paper that I got at the ad hoc homelessness meeting last week that's different than what we got originally. It tries to answer two of Commissioner Hutchings' questions. Should I just read these 2 paragraphs? It might be.
Sure, I don't have a copy of that letter, and I'm not part of that ad hoc committee.
It said, how did sidewalk get here? That was one of the questions. We got here, they say, we got here by way of a range of compounding issues. Sidewalk's coordinated entry program costs $179,000 annually to operate, and though the program is a public mandate, we received just $30,000 in public funding for the program. The $149,000 deficit that this program generates equals roughly 25% of Sidewalk's total budget. As a result, Sidewalk, in terms of net income, posted a $108,000 loss in 2017 and a $38,000 loss in 2018 in spite of a 34% increase in fundraising. So that, another one of your questions, they have been looking for private funding, and they reduced a $100,000 gap to 38. Then the next question was, why is there, the next question that's relevant to Commissioner Hutchings was, why is there such short notice about Sidewalk's financial hardship? They say, we are informing you almost instantaneously after our own realization of the situation ourselves. The short notice was compounded by the fact that an employee operating under heavy pressure and no backup, who is responsible for producing cash flow projections, was faced with a prolonged family emergency that left us with unpaid financial obligations that we were unaware of. This, coupled with the struggles we've already faced to close the gap public funding doesn't provide for coordinated entry, led to the short notice of our hardship. Just throwing that out there since it kind of addresses 2 of the questions that were asked.
Thank you.
That sounds consistent with the conversation that I had with Mr. Owen. I just didn't have those detailed numbers.
But what I was curious about is the volume did seem higher, because in this document they're saying that there's a public funding gap of whatever, 149,000, but you're saying they need 40,000 just to get through February, and you said hundreds of thousands to be solvent. So it's deeper than just that $149,000 gap that
Yeah.
they would have yearly from a public funding gap, which would be mitigated by any private funding.
That's my understanding from the conversation that I had, and why I asked for additional details so that we could really see that.
Thank you for that. Gary, anything?
No.
Okay. Can you
So,
frame this now?
as you've heard, the problem, it appears to be larger than what the letter stated. And the solution may require even more of any capacity that a single jurisdiction may have. So at this point, it's really, we don't have any means and methods to come up with an emergency funding to an attempt to address their concerns. I particularly think that at this point, I don't think we have a positive response to that request. We don't have any money as to where we can probably come up with, unless.
We'd want to take a look at the housing fund. It's not that there's no money in the housing fund, it's just possibly not been appropriated yet.
That's correct.
So if the board so chose, we may be able to find the money. But this does sound like a much bigger issue than you want to put a Band-Aid on. And I would want to know a whole lot more about the management of the finances of the organization. I do wonder, how often are they audited? Have they had a financial audit in the last 2 years? Are they part of the requirement of our government to do subrecipient monitoring? Have we been doing that and looking at the financials? What kind of review has been done that, again, brings us to this crisis point?
There has been a compliance issue in complying with our requests for auditing, and as well as the subrecipient monitoring. Based upon the conversation that I had this morning, I understand that there has now been a response that has begun to comply with our request to monitor, but for 2 months we did not have a response to that.
Other issues here that I think we need to look at beyond just the money.
And also the request went to the cities of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater, as well as the county. So I don't know how the local jurisdictions are planning to respond to this request.
Is it a coordinated response through the, what are we calling the group that looks at the home funding?
Yeah. Ty?
I just wanted to add one more point from this that could be you guys would want to know, because at the letter we got talked about eligibility for state and federal, and I asked you, I was concerned, what does that mean? What would be the alternative? And you said we wouldn't be out of compliance because the money, the contracted parties, basically Family Support Center.
Correct.
And I want to read this other bullet point just so in case it needs to be discussed. Sidewalk says, without Sidewalk's coordinated entry program, Thurston County would be out of compliance for multiple state and federal funding programs. This includes but isn't limited to CHG and HUD McKinney. We are concerned that Sidewalk's closure would lead to a domino effect, as being out of compliance would potentially mean Thurston County would be out of compliance with these programs. Therefore, a variety of programs in the county would lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in funding for homeless services. That's their contention, which you didn't agree with last week, and this is a little bit more, they actually name a couple of programs that weren't in the letter.
What is factual about that is Thurston County is required to have a coordinated entry system in order to be eligible for our federal HUD funding and our state funding, which includes the Consolidated Homeless Grant, as well as our programs that are for document recording fees. We do not currently have Emergency Solutions Grant, but several funding sources do require us that we have a coordinated entry system. but we do have a lead entity that is responsible for providing coordinated entry system services to all populations. And while I certainly think it would be very impactful to have one of those partners not be able to provide that service, we would be committed to the community and to meeting those funding and eligibility requirements. But I do not agree with the statement that the one partner would make it so that Thurston County was not in compliance. We would have to find a way to make sure we were continuing to be in compliance, and there may be other issues around that. But
And I asked you last week if you thought there were other organizations that could pick up, if Sidewalk closes their doors February 1st, what was going to happen? And you said, yes, I believe there's other resources in the community that could step up. I didn't ask you anything further beyond that, but because I knew we were going to be getting more information today, but is that true? And would whatever that additional resource is, would that cost us money anyway? I mean, we're contributing something, and would filling that gap that Sidewalk's closure could leave require us to spend more money anyway, is I guess my question, so I can understand what the alternative is here.
sure. There are other organizations that serve the adult single population or that overall serve all populations. And so there are other nonprofit entities that could qualify and be eligible to provide this service and did apply to be the lead coordinated entry in prior years. I have not engaged in any conversations because, I think we would all much rather support an existing organization to be successful and thrive, and we want to find a way to help support Sidewalk. However, there are other organizations that could be eligible, whether they have the current capacity or the willingness is another issue. But our first step in terms of continuing a coordinated entry program, which the crux of that letter indicates that the coordinated entry program would close, we now know that there's other, if the whole organization closes, then we would also have rapid rehousing and diversion funding to redistribute to organizations, and I believe that could still continue with our existing infrastructure that we have with other organizations. However, as far as the coordinated entry program itself, I believe that we could find a way to continue that program and maintain our compliance and not risk our funding. But it would certainly take some work, and it would take some other organizations to be willing to do that.
Robin?
So I'm trying to understand how Sidewalk fits. So we contract with this Family Support Center, and then they subcontract with Sidewalk to provide the coordinated entry program. Are there any other subcontractors that currently provide the coordinated entry program, or is Sidewalk at this time the only one?
No, it is essentially, I'll say, a three-legged stool with Family Support Center providing coordinated entry services to families and single survivors of domestic violence, which is a large percentage of the single adult homeless population. And Community Youth Services serves youth and young adults up to age 24. So that is also a good percentage of our system. The largest unsheltered population that we have is single individuals, and so Sidewalk's role in the coordinated entry system is that essentially leg of the stool. So it is very important that we have access points for all populations where they naturally obtain services, and the way in which those coordinated entry services for the single adult population are delivered are at partner organizations such as not only at the Sidewalk organization itself for limited hours during the week, but also at the Community Care Center, also at the Lacey Veterans Hub. So they are not the only organization that provides coordinated entry services, but our contract with the Family Support Center is to ensure that the whole coordinated entry system is funded with that allocation of funds. So we would be working closely with the lead entity if there was a piece of the system that was not in
So they are
compliance.
just a piece, they're not the whole shebang?
Yes, that's correct.
Does Sidewalk receive any HUD funding?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. All right, well, I'll tell you what, before I vote on expending taxpayer dollars, there's a whole ton of information I need
Second on that.
on this topic. It just raises a ton of red flags for me, which is scary. Because it seems to be a good organization for years, but just, it's frightening to me. Do you have anything further?
I guess, no, I'd like to echo that, but I hope they're looking at everything. Don't leave anything out as they're reviewing. That makes me terribly nervous when somebody tries to avoid an audit.
So follow up on your suggestion that you need a lot more information. What type of information do you need? Because we need to follow up with you just to bring back this item, because at some point it has to be a formal response from the county to this request. So if there is any gaps of information to, go one way or another, whatever your responses might be, I'd just like to know what additional information you would like from the staff so we can bring it back to your attention in a week or so.
Right, and for me, it would be the information you're seeking to get from financial records and really how they got here in a definitive way, which is all-encompassing. Could be any number of things besides someone being inundated with work and taking time off. And I'm not minimizing it at all. Those things happen. But a real in-depth look. I'm not asking you to do an audit, but you're going to come back with some good information for us. And then, as Commissioner Menzer mentioned, what takes the place if it folds? What takes its place? What fills that gap at the county level or even at the local level? What can we do? I'd rather put money after that than something that's seriously fledgling. Seriously fledgling. That's the kind of information I would look for. Is that it? Okay.
I guess the question for you is how soon, based on what you've heard in those two aspects of getting financial records, I know how easy or difficult will that be, and explore even further what will be the next outfit that can provide the same services if Sidewalk is not able to do so after February.
I think we'll work diligently on this in the next week, and I hope to have those financial statements right away, and we'll kind of work a multi-pronged approach on this because I know for them it's very urgent as well, and so we want to move as quickly as we can. I also know that Mr. Owen is making presentations, so we'll share with him what his public comment time opportunity is, unless there was any kind of further conversations that you want to have with him after we, or the board or whatever representative from their organization, after we gather this information. And then at the same time, we'll also internally look at what resources we may have so that you can make an informed decision.
If you can't get that information in timely fashion, that makes my decision easier.
So I'll bring this item next week, and at that point, at least we'll have an update report from Charlie.
Okay.
Is it possible to have Mr. Owen here to be grilled by us? I mean, he's an intelligent person and a committed person, and I'm sure he can respond to a lot of these. I mean, having to play telephone through Shelley just doesn't seem to be, with the time sensitivity that we have.
That's within your purview.
If he really thinks that, that he can defend this request, and I think he should be able to do it.
Yes, that's what I was referring to when I shared. He knows the public comment time, but if there was any further time that you wanted to have, then I could help to facilitate that happening.
Okay, Gary?
I guess my concern is that if we had the 40,000, for an example, it's only going to do 1 month, it sounds like. And so what's the long-range plan going to consist of to keep this organization functioning adequately.
And then, I would be swayed if our other jurisdictions really were committed and stepped up and wanted to put significant dollars toward a coordinated partnership. That would be persuasive to me, or would matter. So we'll hopefully have some clarity on that, because you said there's presentations this week
Yes.
to those boards.
And
And
we
I
can
would-
invite Phil Owen to attend or come.
I would also really encourage that the full coordinated entry system be part of that, because once again, if we do provide funding and it is for coordinated entry, then our contract would be to increase the contract with Family Support Center to increase their subrecipient amount with them. So I think that for us as a county and the way in which our contract is, because we do not have a contract with Sidewalk for this particular request. So I would encourage to look at the entire system.
Okay.
So that would not help them with their cash flow issues. Yeah, I think there's a whole lot we need to look at.
Yeah.
And then I also would echo the need to coordinate with the cities. If you think about our homeless funds, or not homelessness, but all of our housing funds, the county is pretty much a depository for money from both the unincorporated and the incorporated cities. So the coordinated approach with the cities may be that we tap into that fund. There's a lot of ways to look at it.
Yeah.
So I will bring this item again for your agenda setting for next Tuesday, the 22nd. And I'll coordinate with Shelley to make sure Ms. Phil Owen comes and let's give you a perspective. Based on the magnitude of the request and perhaps the magnitude of the financial issues, I think just giving the forum to express his perspective, I think, is valuable.
And remind Phil that, yes, former law enforcement and a lawyer are going to be grilling him. Okay, have him prepared. Thank you.
Just one other thing also, where in my conversation with Bill is we're happy in our department to provide technical assistance to any of our organizations to help support them. And so we've offered that as well, and try to find other ways to help help address the cash flow issues and things in wherever we can. So we really want to be supportive.
And this is not a fly-by-night outfit, or we wouldn't have spent this much time on it. But Phil's a good egg, and it's a valuable program. So that's what makes us troubling. So thank you very much. You don't have anything else on here, do you, Shelley? I don't think you do.
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioners.
Thank you, Shelley.
CSA building options and the TMBHO. And I think we've got the legendary Mark Friedman in the audience.
Is that what it's legendary?
Yeah.
Yeah. And also I have Central Services staff.
Oh, that's right.
They can
That's
come
right.
to the table.
So okay, go ahead, Romero.
Let me take you back, and I think it's Commissioner Menser's benefit. There is a just about 2,800 square feet behind the triage facility, as we know it. And that is currently empty space. And through the process, even back to 2017, even back then, there is always an opportunity. What is it the county can do in utilizing that square footage? And it was an array of many things. And the community corrections, the tax facility. At some point, we look at the satellite core facility. We looked at the pretrial services being located there, and also and some of those haven't been addressed already in other spaces here in the county. So back on December 11th, you have a request from the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization that perhaps they might be in the position to utilize the additional square footage, particularly that is located behind the triage facility to expand the services. And as I recall, that request was made by Mark Freeman, who's the legendary Mark Freeman, if I may say. And I believe that there was a sense of urgency as to when this perhaps I'm going to quote unquote commitment needs to occur from the county in order for the Thurston Mason BHO can actually submit a grant because that is predicated in securing a grant in order to do the tenant improvements needed to operate these additional services. So that is where we left it on December 11th, and I believe all of you have been briefed on that matter, Commissioner Messer, Commissioner Hutchins, through the BHO, and I think you probably understand a little bit better the need from the BHO perspective, and also from the county's perspective, is this something, a viable option for you to consider as a Board of County Commissioners? This morning, I just came aware some of the, nothing is easy in county government, as I may say. There is always, related to the color of the money, there's always the color of the money who always have those strings attached. And I was made aware this morning that perhaps the initial investment when we purchased this property, it was for public use using a bond, municipal bond. And we're in the process of continuing to pay that municipal bond. And so I will let Robin to give you the details of some of those strings attached of the bond because it's something that you need to be aware. And I think the difference at this point is because the Thurston Mason BHO is no longer a public entity.
Yes,
is a private or non-profit?
So,
Well, hang on, let him finish.
So actually, our state auditor has tagged you as a private nonprofit.
no, but not, then it's a mistake.
They-
It needs to be cleaned up with the federal.
Well, let's let Robin finish, okay? Hang on.
So that's the parameters. So before you can actually get to the point of entertaining this particular option, because from the point of view is a well worth solution to use this empty space, obviously, but also is making sure that you have all that information before you, because rushing into a decision may have other financial consequences. So Robin is going to walk you through the details of the bonding requirements.
So as simply as I can, what our bond advisor tells us is when we pay for facilities with tax exempt bonds, which we have, only up to 10% of the square footage over the life of the bond may be used for a non-government tenant. We didn't look into this limitation at the time we made the original decision to use the CSA building, a portion of it, for a triage center, because at that time we were still an RSN, not a BHO, and part of county government, clearly part of county government. Now there is apparently a question, but we have heard from the state auditor that the BHO is not a government entity, which is why any property taxes have to come through the county and cannot be put directly to the BHO. So perhaps we need some clarity on that. But what we do have to do, if we make the assumption that they're not a government, is to check with our bond advisor and make sure that we're not exceeding this 10% rule, because that would cause a violation under IRS rules. And it's not like we could pay a penalty or anything. We just can't do it. So I don't think that this would be in excess of 10%, but I just need to do the due diligence to check.
Let me ask a point of clarification. We're not going to solve the legal issue here now. It's not going to happen. You're saying we may not be in excess of 10% as it exists, or with the inclusion of expanding
Even with the
6 beds?
inclusion, but that's what I would have to check. I
Okay.
need to provide the information to our bond counsel of, you know, here's the total space paid for with the bond, here's how much square footage it would be the triage center, you know, at this point, the entire CSA building, and let them do what is an extremely complicated analysis of whether or not this would violate our bond issue. And I don't think it is. We just need to check.
Well, at least with the government being closed, IRS isn't watching this program right now.
But I see that there's a January 30 deadline on application. And I could ask our bond counsel, you know, could they speed this along?
Did you have something? Diane?
Yes, and I'd like to provide a path forward.
Yeah, let me see if these guys want to weigh in on this.
Well, I'm waiting to hear Mark.
Yeah, me too.
I wouldn't even give them the mic.
Yeah, done.
Okay. You share anything regarding this, but not the legal issue, not the haggling back and forth, but about the grant, the amount, what you want to use the beds for, all that type of stuff if you want. And these guys will ask you questions.
So the request is.
Get the mic right in front of you, please.
Closer.
You got to be on mic, yeah.
The BHO is requesting to expand.
Hang on. Introduce yourself and what your title is, please.
Can I leave out the legendary part?
No, you leave out.
Mark Friedman, Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization, a quasi-governmental entity between Thurston and Mason government.
I knew it. You're from New York.
It's
Okay.
formed by an interlocal 39.030. The BHO cannot exist as a nonprofit. And so it was interesting to try to identify it early on with the Secretary of State in terms of labeling, but.
Okay, but now, for purposes
So for purposes,
of
yeah,
timeliness, we
well,
want to get into the issue
yeah.
and not the legal issue. We're not going to solve that.
The intent of the use is to expand the existing 10 beds to 16 beds. The additional 6 beds would be identified as stabilization beds, which means that they are kind of purposes a 23-hour bed for quick drop-off and stabilize the individual medication and then move them on. It would create better access for crisis use of the facility as opposed to involuntary care. The other part of that is with the rules around the IMD rules, Institutes for Mental Diseases, it's a federal law. You cannot use Medicaid for a facility that exceeds 16 beds. So right now, the staffing ratio, whether we have 10 beds or we add on 6 beds and bring it up to 16, is almost the same. So the operating cost is sort of mitigated by running this operation already that we have there. So we could add on the 6 beds. The capital funding is available now through the governor's request, essentially, that goes through Department of Commerce. The grant closes the end of this month. And we're eligible for receiving the grant, as we have already for the facilities out in Mason County. What else can I say about it? The other part is, especially as things evolve after 2020, and that the managed care organizations will be paying Medicaid for these beds on more of a fee-for-service aspect, we will be able to keep the costs down of the beds by moving, again, being cost-effective by running 16 beds as opposed to 10 beds, because the overall cost will be 1 unit, and we can manage that better. So instead of charging, we right now, the valuation treatment facility is about $900 per bed per day. As a 10-bed facility, each bed is probably closer $1,200–1,500 per bed day. So this, by adding on 6, we bring our ratio down. Managed care organizations are more likely to buy the bed.
Okay. Questions of Mark? Or comments?
I mean, it makes perfect sense to do it because it doesn't cost that much. Can you put in for the grant anyway without the legal issue being solved here?
I'm trying to think about how to do this politely. In my mind, in the state's mind, the legal issue is we are a government entity, so we can put in for the grant. Yes.
So along that question, though, do you need a commitment from the county or just a LOI?
The topic would be site control, so I need to be able to identify with the grant that we have this site available.
Okay. Do you have something?
We asked a lot of questions about this at the BHO meeting, and I think it's a great, chance to improve our capacity. So, and there's a lot of financial reasons to do it. So I agree with the reasoning that you've laid out, and I'd love to be able to do this.
As would I. Yeah. Go ahead, Romero, please.
So I have a question for you, Mark. When you said you should be able to prove site control, what does that mean?
I would be submitting a lease agreement with the county, or the MOU that essentially we have existing with the county to say, yes, we have, this is where we would be putting the facility. I can't go for the grant and just have a vague, that we'll be able to do it somewhere.
And I'm just looking at the logistics. The logistics of having a lease agreement in place, which requires a board approval of the lease agreement and perhaps going through the process. So logistically, the next board meeting is the 29th. And it would be unrealistic to have the lease agreement in place. So let me finish for a second.
Yeah.
And I was looking for a way as to, if the bond issue is clear, what appears to be not an issue, hopefully. I believe a letter of commitment from the Board of County Commissioners should be adequate to state the commitment to use this space. So that's what I want to clarify.
I would agree with you on that.
So I think my suggestion for the board will be is maybe give Robin a week to look into this issue. I'll come back with this matter to you next Tuesday morning during the agenda setting. And at that point, I will ask Mark to draft a letter on your own language, a letter of commitment that perhaps you may consider signing at that time.
But knowing there's two sides to every story, I don't want just Robin looking into it with the bond authority, whomever, and or legal.
No, I would immediately reach out to our bond counsel and ask them to run the numbers.
Okay. And I would expect the same thing of you and your counsel.
What I would be...
As with your government or not.
We have documentation probably from the Secretary of State, a couple of other sources, to say that we are a government entity. So,
I also have documentation that says they're not.
Right, so
we're not going to solve that. I think
no,
that
but I
we
need
can
both
get
sides
to
looking into
the-
it and talking offline.
So
Yeah.
next week, I will bring this matter for your final decision. And,
Okay.
and at that point, we'll have a draft letter. Give me the, and ready for you to sign that letter. And we'll give an opportunity for Robin to give you a perspective on the bond issue.
Right.
Commissioner
works.
Menser, did you have something else to add?
I guess I just, I don't, you have a lawyer or an authority saying one thing and you have authority saying the other. That doesn't just mean we lose. So I guess I guess I want to be thinking on both fronts. If there's a possibility that Mark's position is correct, if anyone has a bright idea of how to resolve that conflict, I would want to pursue that.
I don't think it needs to be resolved. I think that we'll be able to go forward because I truly believe we're going to be less than the 10% rule.
Okay.
So I don't think that's going to get in the way.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I'd like to set that aside for a moment and get the bond counsel.
And the
Good, thank
purpose
you.
of this
I thought it was a
conversation,
bugaboo.
if I may, the purpose of this conversation, commissioners, is to bring all the appropriate information before you in order for you to make an informed decision. I'm not expecting you to be the judge and determine whose argument is valid than the other. It's really just to bring all that information before you in order for you to make an informed decision on any subject. So what we're asking is an additional week to bring additional information for you.
Okay.
yeah, we will also, my staff will contact budget office to find the source within the state orders so we can clean up the information coming from them. Because we get audited by them yearly, and so we have contact. The other piece for, even in terms of that requirement, we don't own the building when it's not a cell. And so this is simply in the lease agreement that we have already. The MOU leading to the lease agreement is for maintenance services and to use the facility. And it's only part of the facility. We're not asking for the whole thing.
Okay. Brian, did you have anything to add?
Welcome
Okay.
to the discussion.
Yeah. All
So
right,
just
anything
before
further?
we go, Mark is going to give me a draft letter.
Draft for a letter of commitment.
And Robin will follow up with that information.
And probably even in minutes, if it said that they approve it, would probably even get us there as well at this stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, fellas. Thank you very much. Regional Agricultural Partnership.
And you have a copy, this document on your packet?
Yes.
Right. And I met with the representative from the Economic Development Council, and the gist of this letter of understanding is to have a cooperating agreement as to how counties, that would be Thurston County, Mason County, Grace Harbor County, to have a comprehensive collaborative approach to advance the agricultural sector in a coordinated effort. This really is a letter of understanding. If I can read you the objectives or the purpose is to increase effectiveness of agricultural development initiatives through, where appropriate, coordination, cooperation, and collaboration. Enhance and improve the efficiency of efforts through regular communication. Develop a strategy vision for regional agricultural development. Improve financing opportunities by demonstrating to public and private funders coherent, coordinated approach championed by the individual signing this letter, this MOU. So this is really just to start creating an environment for cooperation because Lewis County, Thurston County, Grace Harbor County, coordinating effort means we don't have to compete in some of those projects that may come along. And attached to this is, for instance, as an example, the agricultural business park in Tenino, the grain storage handling facility in the Chehalis, and the craft brewing and the distilling center in I think it's Tumwater, no Tenino. And I guess this is a good document. The EDC would like the county to participate in that signature. And I will ask the board to consider delegating that authority to me so I can sign on your behalf. We have an initial meeting. The initial document was a little bit off. From my perspective, this is a revised document based on my feedback. Josh was also part of that meeting. I believe that it's a good document. Any time that we'll have the opportunity to coordinate at a regional level, it brings nothing but value to anything that we would like to do. In this, in advancing the agricultural sector among the three counties is a good venture for your consideration.
Sounds good.
I mean, we're already on it, aren't we? We're listed.
We haven't signed it. I'm asking you to delegate that.
I mean, it says Thurston County. Everybody else has?
Nobody has yet.
Oh.
These are proposed
And,
signatories.
okay, my only
Yeah,
question
yeah.
would be, does this have any kind of an adverse effect on what Tenino's trying to do down there?
No, because it's
No.
listed as
I mean,
part.
I know they're signed up. I mean,
Yeah.
And it's listed
Yeah,
on the bottom
okay.
as one of the projects.
So the mayor's going to like this.
And this, he'll love it.
Okay.
And
And
this
the
is,
city of Tenine is also
Yeah,
part of
I
it.
see him on there.
and Governor Inslee supports this development. He supports it.
Yeah.
And I only have one, I'll just spit it out. My only issue is number 2 in the first paragraph, avoid or otherwise minimize competition. And I understand the spirit of that among all of these entities, avoid or minimize competition, but competition makes us all better.
Yeah,
If I'm trying to compete with these guys, it's going to sharpen me.
Yeah, and they avoid and minimize soft language because one of the concerns that I have is, the county could have an initiative, and Thurston County has the ability to pursue that initiative without going through this regional body for approval. So that's how this soft language came to be, because I had the same concerns when.
So does it limit us then, potentially?
No. And
Okay.
again, this, a letter of understanding, is not a binding
Okay.
document.
I think it's a great idea. What's that?
It's aspirational.
Yeah.
Yes, aspirational, okay. And aspirate. Anything further? There you go. And, well, we're ticking these things off. Off-campus space and human resources. Let's do the human resources one, 'cause I think the other one's going to dictate, or may dictate more time. The MOU action might not be so.
Yeah, do you
Timely
mind
or-
asking La Bonita to come, please? And this is an unusual item to be included on the agenda setting. And the reason is because usually you take those actions related to approving an MOU with a bargaining unit on your regular board meeting. However, we don't have a board meeting until the 29th. And in this particular recommendation or action for your consideration is just MOU with the Association of Counties Deputy Prosecuting Attorneys confirming the 3% cost of living increase in 2019. And as you may recall, last week you approved a couple of contracts related to the cost of living in 2019. This was a little bit of a delay. We couldn't include it last week.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for the urgency for you to consider taking this action today is because we like to, put on their paychecks
Yes.
as soon as possible. So that is the only reason. Again, this is an unusual, but it's within your purview to take that action. And I will ask La Bonita to come and record that action.
Do you have a motion?
It's right here.
She's not at her desk. We're looking for her. Is there another person that can assist?
Whitney?
Whitney, yeah. It's right here. They move to approve. That's the motion for your consideration.
Okay.
Any questions on the MOU? Okay.
Give us a.
I would move to approve the memorandum of understanding between Thurston County.
Do we have to wait?
We have to wait. We
Yeah,
need to
wait
record
until
The
that.
board.
Oh, okay. That's what we're waiting for.
It's all the formal actions we need to wait for that recording. And,
What are you, new?
and,
It sounded like you were waiting for a motion.
No, no,
I'm glad to see you trying to expedite the situation, though.
when we're ready, I will ask the vice chair to move the. Sorry about the procedural steps.
Well, it's silly me, I thought this would be quicker than the open space or whatever, off-campus space. Yep.
But we need there's a
The
little,
clerk has to,
Oh, enter Whitney.
there's a little magic book that we need to record every single action, just to make sure. Yeah.
It's all important and fun.
And just the date and time when you start recording, Commissioner.
Okay. All right, it's January 15th, 2019. It's 11:38 in the morning, and we're finishing up with the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting and work session. I'm Commissioner John Hutchings, and with me is also Commissioner Edwards and Commissioner Menser. And we're discussing the Human Resources MOU as an action. And do you want to frame that?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. Romero Chavez, County Manager.
Thank you.
For your consideration today is considering approving a memorandum of understanding between Thurston County and the Association of Thurston County Deputy Prosecuting Attorneys. This particular MOU ratifies in the 3% cost of living increase for that bargaining unit in the year 2019. And this is just confirming what you have already approved in the 2019-2020 budget, which includes already a 3% cost of living increase. So there's no impact to the 2019 budget.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? Go ahead.
Yes, this just formalizes that prior discussion that we'd had in authorizing that, right?
That is
So that we
correct.
can make
Yeah.
payments to these individuals
Yeah,
legally?
and in fact, this is the instrument in which
Yes.
we agree with the bargaining unit.
Okay.
Commissioner Mintz, or any questions? No comments? Okay. Looking for a motion?
Yes, I would move to approve the memorandum of understanding between Thurston County and the Association of Thurston County Deputy Prosecuting Attorneys.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Nope. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Thank
Motion
you.
to close.
You need the ending time?
Yeah, it just.
11:40.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
pretty
you.
quick.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Whitney. And that takes us to the final, until we get, oh, no, it doesn't. Do you want to do the what's the HCP educational video?
Yeah, there's a video related to the Habitat Conservation Plan. They would like for you to, the staff is going to present that to you, and we're going to make that available to the public. It is a very nice, very soft approach video as to what the HCP is planning to do, the Habitat Conservation
I'm not
Plan.
going to do it just yet, but is it like a 40-minute thing, or?
No, it's very brief,
Okay.
and we would like to hear your feedback. That's pretty much the gist of it.
Is this
Oh,
based on if approved by U.S.
Yeah,
Fish and Wildlife?
yeah, it's more
But we don't
informational.
know if it's going to be approved or
But
not
it's
yet, right?
informational video as to what this is. So,
Okay.
how about if you hold judgment until you
Let's
have
do
the
that.
chance to see the
Let's do
video?
that now. Let's just do that now. And the viewers at home can see it when it's playing?
I don't believe so, no.
All right. Joshua Cummings, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. So the video is being queued up now by Whitney for your review. It is not currently available to the public. I wanted to provide respect to the board to have their viewing of it first. And I also wanted to just relay that this, as the Commissioner, excuse me, sorry about that. As County Manager Chavez has stated, this is an attempt to take a light approach on the next steps for how we communicate the Habitat Conservation Plan. And wanted to be very clear that our team works on multiple levels with different engagements on the Habitat Conservation Plan. On the technical level with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, on the personal level, when citizens come in and have been impacted by the HCP and the Gopher issue. And so just knowing that this is not the only approach, our target is to try and get all of the word out in all the different varying ways to communicate this very difficult and complicated issue. This particular attempt is one to be light and a little bit of humor, but know that we address it on multiple different levels. This is not the only way. And once we show it today, it'll be available on our community planning website on the Community Planning and Economic Development.
So this is a private screening. We've never had that before. That's kind of cool. And you produce this, or we made this in-house?
So our community planning team, Stacy Klein in particular, wrote the storyboards, and then we partnered and contracted with a production team that put the final video together. And again, this is our attempt at making sure that it's addressed in a level that is general and broad. And yeah, this is your private screening.
Perfect. Thank you.
For the public. Thank you.
Thurston County is home to 4 endangered species. After 10 years of environmental groups petitioning for their listing, the U.S. government added the streaked hornmark, the Taylor's checker spot butterfly, the Oregon spotted frog, and the Arizona pocket gopher to the federal endangered species list to save them from extinction. That means if you build where they live, you don't have to save the animals on your property. But by federal law, you do have to replace their habitat elsewhere. This is called mitigation. Mitigation is required because these animals don't do well when they're too close to homes and roads. To sustain their population and ensure their survival, they need prairie habitat with the right kind of food, places to cocoon, nest, and tunnel, room to have their babies. They also need a little distance from predators. If you want to build where these protected animals live, you need a federal permit, a potentially long and cumbersome process. Unless you're building in unincorporated Thurston County, the county government is getting its own federal permit to make it easier for you. When you get a building permit from Thurston County, we'll look up your project location for you. And if there are endangered species, the county's habitat plan can cover your project and provide you with mitigation options. It's faster, it's friendly, and it's local. And if you're issued a building permit by Thurston County government, you can be sure that your project meets both county and federal regulations. You'll also be doing your part to keep Thurston County beautiful for all species.
It's fantabulous.
That's it. So our great community planning staff is, Chris Chapeau is part of that group, and just wanted to say thank you to their good work on this.
Thank you, Chris. I like
Short
it.
and sweet.
I like it. Feedback?
Any initial feedback? Any?
Yeah, it kind of lightens up an aggravating topic.
It shortens it. It does. That's beautiful.
And so, thank you, lightens up an aggravating topic. To follow on to that, I just want to make sure that we're clear that the county government and the HCP process is currently in a hold status while the federal government is not operating. We are not in talks because they're not answering their phones or emails, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So we're still awaiting some of the information that was committed to us for the end of 2018, but wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that we're waiting and ready to continue going forward on this HCP process when available. So not to dampen the mood of a light video, but want to make sure that we're all clear that we're working to move forward when possible.
Yes,
Okay.
That's beautiful.
So we'll make
Comments?
this.
good.
We'll make this video available
Okay.
to the public.
Well done, Josh.
Thank you.
It's better
Chris?
than when I was knocking on doors in the campaign, I'd carry around a frequently asked questions from the federal
Yeah.
page, because they put one out, and it still was like incomprehensible
Yeah.
trying to explain HCP to voters. I mean, I
Right.
spent hours, so this is way clearer.
And so once we put it on our website, it's available for linkage on any of the other platforms.
Now, but this is also enough quality enough to get it submitted for some type of an award or something, not like an Emmy or or Golden
Maybe.
Globe, but something. I mean, that is just really cool. Are other jurisdictions doing this? I'm telling you, we're leaders. We're the capital county leading the way.
Yeah, let's explore those options. That's a good idea.
Thank you.
And PIO, I'm sure, will work with you as well,
Certainly.
getting this out too. Thank you very much. And now we're getting down to off-campus space.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Edwards' item. He asked me to bring that to your attention, so.
I guess what I'm wondering is, as we attempt to move forward on the courthouse business, how much are we going to try to consolidate our day-to-day activities? I mean, are we going to move, we're not going to move the Tilley Road Department anywhere, What about the Health Department? What about the Sheriff's Office? What about off-campus auditor? Just different things. What's the potential end result that we're going to present to the voters? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, and we can probably elaborate a little bit more this afternoon on that. But at this point, it does not include Public Works, the Tilley campus. It includes some of the functions that Public Works has as part of the permitting process. It does not include public health, but it does include some of the public health services they provide here as part of the permitting process.
That are being done now.
It includes a consolidation of all the Building 4, Building 5, and Building 6, which is Human Resources and Financial Services, and as well as, I'm sorry.
The what?
The voting and also the public defense. That's the consolidation of the campus. Also includes the voting center that's located at the Mudman site.
That the
auditors will
currently
become
has.
and be part of this new campus. At this point, on the planning aspects, it does include the sheriff's space, what they currently have here
But
at the
not
courthouse.
their off-campus space.
Not their off-campus. And I believe you heard from the sheriff's office that their consolidation is a little bit different. They would like to achieve, because they would like to consolidate all their operations, field operations and everything in a single roof, including a space for their what do you call weapons, and you know much better.
Armory,
You know,
armory,
armory.
yeah.
Some of which the storage needs, which at this point they have in 3 different locations. So when you talk about consolidation, we're trying to consolidate all the areas that I described to you, but the consolidation from the sheriff's office is a different perspective. And the sheriff's office are going to come to you in this year to, again, give their view as to what the consolidation will be. But again, the courthouse civic center project as it is right now includes the square footage needed the sheriff's office is currently using here at the current building 3.
So I may have missed it. Did PHSS, they're staying on Lilly?
Yeah.
And do we own that building?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And this is related, since we're into this topic. I was curious about, you know, the different departments that I've talked to. They've got, oh, well, you know, it'd be great if I could do, you know, like they've got concept of how the space would work best for them. And is there a point in the, I mean, we're not, that level of design hasn't happened. That they would be in working on that later. Is that right?
As part of the analysis, we're just going through assessing the space needs and raw square footage needs.
Right.
And you heard about the projection, you know, where we would like to be 320,000 square feet, whether we go with a 50-year life or less.
Yeah.
It's all that part of the conversation. There is different alternatives. So the next step is, you know, what you're talking about is the design. And even on some of the previous briefings, you heard the assessor, they would like to have the parking close to his office. You know, so all that needs to be, all that is not part of this phase.
Yeah.
Because it's way too premature to get into the level of details of that.
I'm just asking
Yeah.
that if let's just take the assessor as a hypothetical, says stuff like that, I can report back. You will have input into.
There will be opportunities down when the actual design of the space, when they start putting partitions, stairways, doors, and everything, and the design. That's when each department will have the opportunity to provide some input within parameters.
Sure.
Is there any, well, Robin was going to say something there, so.
No, go ahead.
Has there been any discussion, realizing that we're going to figure out the layout later, the efficiencies of off-campus per square foot charge? That was brought up by the sheriff the other day about, I don't know, $13 a foot versus $30 a foot, that type of thing. And those are long-range costs. And why I'm asking is I had an opportunity to talk with the port folks last week and this week. They've got that building in Tumwater that they're going to ask the contractor to take down. Hasn't even got started. It's only a frame now.
Yeah, it was on the news this past week.
But there's 500 parking spots there, and there's 75,000 square feet available. And it's going to, it would look like the Attorney General's office, kitty corner right across. It's a energy efficient operation. I don't know, they give it a 96% or whatever. So I'm just wondering about, as we talk about moving forward and asking the taxpayers to pay a pretty hefty bill at some point, are we considering all options and then the constitutionality of the different offices that have to be, reside in Olympia versus a satellite like the sheriff has got going now? Are there ways that we could look at that so we could have a court facility that would serve the courts for sure, kind of the name of the courthouse, because that's a big issue on the security and whatnot. But yet we need to consolidate certain services like the assessor and the treasurer and the auditor need to be kind of co-located if at all possible for efficiencies. So I just bring that issue up that there might be an opportunity to have a little more activity off campus. I mean, what's the downside? It isn't like we're taking paperwork from one office to another. Everything is done electronically. And just kind of food for thought as we move forward. I know this afternoon we're going to have a discussion on where we're going, but are we missing any opportunities to do the public's work in a more efficient manner? I'm just asking the question. So.
And if related to your question, let me take you back to when we were looking at the 12 different sites at some point. Some that included a, outside of the city limits, with the understanding that perhaps, under the state law, there are certain functions that need to occur within the county seat. That's the city of Olympia. And for instance, you can probably, some counties have exercised just having an office in the county seat of the sheriff, but the main operations of the sheriff's outside of the county seat. I believe the only operation that needs to happen, full operation, is the Superior Court in the county seat. We did explore that option, as you may recall, when we were looking at the 12 different sites. But at that time, the decision was to consolidate, bring it in to provide a more consolidated services to the citizens. And that's how the whole selection criteria went about to narrowing down to the 3 sites there for your consideration this afternoon. So it was a consideration, but at that point, the decision was, as opposed to spread that out, to bring that in.
And the only reason I bring this up is because about that same time frame that we were moving towards this direction with the courthouse, we were also talking about a convention center. And I mentioned earlier that didn't go over very good with the voters. One of the things I heard on a regular basis during that was, can't you do things more efficiently in government? And so I continue to ask, maybe that opportunity didn't exist. I've mentioned in the past that good chance the malls are going to close up because of internet activity and such. So I just don't want to jump into things without having a good understanding of what the best move is for the taxpayers that are going to be paying the bill. So just because we kind of got away from it 2 years ago, does that mean we're locked into staying away from it? Because if we were going to consolidate everything, it'd be a heck of a lot bigger building, bring health department, road department. I mean, if we did all that. So we have certain areas that we've deemed are okay to be standalone off-campus locations and seem to function pretty darn good. So I'm just kind of revisiting maybe something that we did have a conversation about a couple years ago.
I think with the health department, there was the thought that there is an entire health
complex over there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So that's almost like a hub, an economic hub related to health.
Yes.
And we put our health building right in the middle of that. So that's one consideration. They are close to the providers that they serve. And then with Tilly, they need so much room for their large equipment, and it's my understanding that Tilly is centrally located. Why would we move that? Very strategic.
Areas of the county.
There are inefficiencies, though, even with the age of electronic records. I know that one of my frustrations, and Romero can stop me, but I think his too, is we can't seem to make these screens work for a Skype type thing. So you see public health people or public works people, both, in the audience every Tuesday morning. They have to drive here, they sit here, instead of just joining the meeting across the screens when it's their time. So there's huge, in my opinion, waste of time when they have to drive here, they have to come for meetings. Why can't we make better use of our technology? So that's a conversation.
So, and that is probably something, my objective is to start working this, because I don't know, none of you were part of this major investment technology investment. The TVs, cameras, all that was done probably 3 years ago now. And from my point of view, extremely disappointed because it was a hefty investment.
Yeah.
And yet we start limping as to how we can better utilize the technology that we have available to us. And what Robin said is a good example, because and that's something that I'd like to solve hopefully this year as to how we can bring this technology so the directors are not here sitting waiting
2 and 3 and 4
2 or
hours.
3 or 4 hours. It's just when the time comes, we give them a phone call, they connect via Skype or a video conference, and that's the way it should be conducted.
So
In the
before
interest of
we,
efficiency, for you to say something, I've got to make it quick.
I'm going to make it real
well,
quick.
just for me to finish my thought, you know, in the interest of efficiency, between that type of a disconnect and it's hard to, you do a lot of business through hallway conversations. You know,
Oh, yeah.
you can't have those with people who are across town. So there are great reasons and a huge emphasis beside co-locating everyone in one spot.
I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I
Right.
agree with you 100%. I'm hoping that we can utilize efficiencies more effectively, and maybe this IT person that we're bringing on can solve some of these problems, because we've got a kind of a junior IT operation, if you will, that hasn't been able to solve it for whatever reason. So if we did have that solved so that we could use Skype type interaction, I think we'd save a carbon footprint that you wouldn't believe. We
Yes,
couple
we
that
would.
with some of the inspections that we're planning on doing through technology to keep people from driving around so much. So I just asked the questions. I'm looking for efficiencies, and I think that's a good example. But hopefully we're going to get this mess fixed,
That's
and
right.
it won't matter if they're in China or here when it comes right down to it. I'm not advocating.
So
for that,
this afternoon, I'll provide my humble vision as to how the services should be provided when we get to the new courthouse.
okay, I'm thinking of capital investment versus utilizing technology. That's all.
Commissioner Menser, you have any commissioner items you want to bring up?
Just that no county commissioner business gets done in hallway conversations, Robin.
Well, not with 2 commissioners, but think of all the things you learn as you walk through our.
I'm just teasing because
You
Ramirez
sure?
always making
That's-
us.
Yes, we're very clear, no illegal meetings,
Correct. Well, illegal is a
Strict
sick
lines
bird.
about that.
You mean unlawful.
unlawful, yes.
One thing, I attended the executive work group yesterday for the Capitol Lake Deschutes Estuary, hyphen as it's called now, or hyphen. And I just want to ask, they were asking if all the local governments involved in this work group regarding the Capitol Lake issue, if we are tracking our in-kind money or the time spent, whether any staff, PIO, shoreline, any water, anything that we're doing regarding Capitol Lake, is it our staff, is that money being tracked, that we can show the governor it's an in-kind donation? So
Commitment.
we have buy-in that we're working on this, don't just cut the funds back, we're all committed as a work group.
Well, this is the first time that I've heard that we should be tracking as an in-kind.
The same with everybody, but it was brought up yesterday as, hey, what if? Let's see if we're doing that, and if we haven't, let's start doing that.
So I think it's been a while since we've devoted a lot of time to this process, county staff. There was a point in time when there was an engineers group, and I think our county engineer was on that
I
group.
was,
Were you?
Or the technical
you were
service group or something like that?
participating, but it's been a long time.
it's been 3 years.
But I mean, that was probably the most significant time that anyone in the county spent, and that
it really
has
is your
been
time as the
disbanded.
chair who's attending the executive.
Right, and everything all
So-
inclusive.
As a county, I would say, no, we're not right now, but if we put the word out,
Yeah, but
who
not to
would be
say that
working on it?
when they get into the EIS process,
Then we'll
and then
have
it will
time
be
to
a lot
track.
of review and coordination, then certainly that will be worth tracking the expenses.
Yeah.
over time.
Well, I
If
just
we
dropped
can-
that as food for thought.
If we can claim that as in-kind instead of the governor and saying, you know, counties shall put in this much money, or the
Yep.
match that we saw
Yep.
in one of the budgets.
That's the intent
That would be
behind
a
it.
really good thing.
Yeah.
Benz, you were there for the EIS discussion. Was any mention made of the letter that we sent to them about evaluating the upper Deschutes as well.
No, but I brought that up. There were several issues, and I asked about that. And I used the guise of, if you're debating an issue, whether the chicken or the egg came first, you're neglect if you don't consider the rooster in the whole thing. So if you're looking at, and Pete Komet brought up, not just testing the lake and lower Deschutes, but testing Puget Sound water. And I said, but go back upstream, go further up, and let's find out what might be contributing to this factor. And it's transitory sediment. There's all kinds of issues. And when there's erosion in the river, all kinds of junk falls in the river, and more stuff comes down. And let's look at everything. But of course, it was we don't have the money. It's already been cut from the budget, you know. So how do you capture that? But it was mentioned. I did mention that yesterday. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that it? Good. Staff, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being
Thank you,
here. And
Commissioners.
it's 12:05. We're done.
Okay.